Chapter 840. The mortal sovereign world was on the move. Li Haojia, Lord Greenfeather, and Li Zuqing, the three powerhouses, were paying attention to every movement on the galactic battlefield in front of them. When they saw that the galactic battlefield was completely distorted and a large number of five poisons were exploding like fireworks, their worried expressions disappeared slightly. The Lord of Five Poisons was so powerful that he could dominate the galaxy with his invincible divine powers. With only tens of thousands of people, he could hold back hundreds of thousands of troops. This was why he could fight with the Xinyuan Empire again and again more than 100,000 years ago. For this reason, Li Haojia controlled the big goblin and sped up the migration. The other powerhouses didn't dare to be careless and gathered under the barrier. Everyone knew how powerful the Xinyuan Empire was, and no one knew where a large number of powerhouses would come from. This was a war between small worlds. The stronger the person, the stronger the force. Deep in the core of the primordial god world, Su Fong, who was using the ability of Wuling Goblin to devour the essence of the world, felt a certain vibration in the primordial god world. He released his great perfection ability and separated a trace of his consciousness to clearly see that there were armies everywhere in the primordial god world, and there were currently millions of them. Then, he activated the origin of the primordial god world that had been integrated during this period of time. In addition, he had devoured the true body of the great Emperor Dipper and the golden core of the third prince. The essence of the primordial god world in his body had reached a very shocking level. Almost, except for the current emperor of the primordial god world, no other cultivator of the origin could have more astonishing essence of the Xinyuan Empire than him. Because of this, when he displayed the power of the primordial god world, his great perfection ability reached a height that could penetrate the heavens and the earth. It was almost as if he was looking down on his own territory. Millions. Not only that, but there were millions of cultivators of the Ascension Realm and the Flying Celestial Realm gathered under the barrier of the primordial god world, and countless forces on the ground were gathering more cultivators. It was estimated the entire primordial god world would have tens of millions of cultivators participating in the war. The situation of the primordial god world is too different from the Wutan realm and the Beichen zone. The world is ruled by an emperor, and the emperor restricts the laws of the world. This weakens the power of cultivators. Once an army is gathered, the countless cultivators of the primordial god world can be used by the Xinyuan Empire. Tens of millions of practitioners, and most of them are experts in the feather transformation realm. Regardless of whether it is the explosive formation, magical powers, or magic treasures, it is really amazing. I still have to think of a way to deal with the two immortals. Without the two immortals, the Xinyuan Empire will not be able to take out many doctrine artifacts. On my side, those who have doctrine artifacts are all top experts. More than a dozen giants all have doctrine artifacts. With this overwhelming advantage, it is not difficult to deal with tens of millions of practitioners in the galaxy. Seeing the situation inside the origin god world, Su Fong was greatly shocked. 10 million cultivators, what kind of scene was this? Although the Beichen zone and the Wutan realm also had 10 million cultivators, it was impossible for them to gather together. However, the Xinyuan Empire had already made such an incredible and shocking move. For Su Fong and countless masters, the Xinyuan Empire was not as simple as a giant crocodile. When the consummate ability penetrated the world barrier, he could still see millions of troops and the Star River in the distance, which was fiercely fighting. Sect Master has the five poisons real body. I guess that some time ago, my yin and yang power and a lot of Immortal's resources washed his body. Now his strength has recovered to the level it was more than 100,000 years ago. He is really powerful. He can use the power of tens of thousands of people in the Star River to display a great magic skill that can restrict hundreds of thousands of practitioners. It's time for me to leave here. He took back the consummate ability. Everything was under his control. He adjusted his breath and was about to inform the Wuling Goblin to prepare to leave the depths of the Earth's core. Buzz! Who would have thought? Suddenly, a familiar vibration came from his body. He released his mind and immediately caught it. When he entered the Yang Meridian, he saw a brand new Yang Meridian forming. This was the 13th Yang Meridian that was in the process of breaking through. He didn't expect that it could be successfully condensed at such a critical time in just a few years. Why was it so unbelievably fast? With a shocked expression, he got the Wuling Goblin to continue controlling the surrounding Earth's core energy. He poured most of his energy into the Yang Meridian and used the 9 Yang 9 transformations. His pure Yang power was madly attacking the 13th Yang Meridian that was forming. Condensing the Yang Meridian was important. However, he was more curious about how the 13th Yang Meridian could be successfully formed in just a few years. When his mind entered the Yang Meridian, he thought that he would have to spend a lot of effort to discover the reason. At this moment, his attention was attracted by the 9 Yang Meridian in the state of circulation. When the 9 Yang Meridian formed, it happened to be the first transformation of the 9 Yang 9 transformations. The 10th, 11th, 12th, and even the 13th Yang Meridian were connected. The 9 Yang Meridian were the source of the entire Yang Meridian. An unprecedented change took place in the 9 Yang veins. First, the mysterious golden lotus stone flower floated in the center of the 9 Yang Meridian. The origin power it released was even more dazzling. Moreover, it seemed to have reached a state of fusion with the Yang Meridian. Secondly, the 5 star-like circles of light were mysteriously floating around the golden lotus stone flower. This scene was too similar to the incomparably deep Milky Way. A dazzling planet released starry circles of light. The golden lotus stone flower and the 5 circles of light were similar to a planet in the Milky Way. They both released starry brilliance and floated in the boundless Yang Meridian world. It gave the Su Fong the illusion that there was an additional planet in the Yang Meridian. Why did the Milky Way disappear? After recovering, he continued to search for the reason and the changes. There were indeed new changes. There used to be Milky Way in the 9 Yang Meridian. However, it had disappeared. There were also no Milky Way in the 10th to 12th Yang Meridian. The 12th Yang Meridian had lost its Milky Way. It had become a primitive state with only pure Yang energy. When he first started cultivating the 9 Yang 9 transformations and formed the first Yang Meridian, there was only pure Yang energy in the Yang Meridian. Later, because he absorbed too much world essence from the Zhuotian world and Mortal Emperor world, the Milky Way slowly formed Milky Way in the Yang Meridian. Now, why did it all disappear? Why were there only 5 Milky Way floating around the world fragment in the 9 Yang Meridian? Could it be that the Milky Way in the 12 Yang Meridian worlds had turned into the 5 Milky Way circles? It was unbelievable. It was inexplicable. A mortal cultivator like him could not figure out at all. Since I can't figure it out, let me see what's so special about the Milky Way circles and the world fragment. Suddenly, he calmed down and placed all his attention on the golden lotus stone flower and the 5 circles of light floating around it. He released pure Yang energy and the world aura into the 5 circles of light. He immediately discovered that each of the 5 circles of light had an internal Milky Way space. Furthermore, it had the same aura as the Milky Way in the Yang Meridian. It was just that the space was different. 5 circles of light represented 5 Milky Way spaces. Next, he discovered that within the 5 circles of light, he could clearly sense the world essence of Mortal Emperor World, Wutan World, Beichen Zone, Immortal Primordial World, and Primordial God World. How could he explain it? That's right, I've fused with Mortal Emperor World, Beichen Zone, Wutan World, Immortal Primordial World, and Primordial God World. There's also the aura of Zhuotian world in my body. Could it be that I've fused with the 5 minor worlds, and then these 5 Milky Way circles were born around the golden lotus stone flower? From another perspective, the 5 Milky Way circles were born because I've fused with the 5 minor worlds. That must be the case. Otherwise, why would there be such a change after I fused with the primordial God world? But what does the disappearance of the Milky Way in the Yang Meridian have to do with the birth of the 5 Milky Way circles? Could it be that I still have to unravel this secret from the golden lotus stone flower? After pondering over and over again, he finally had some ideas. In the end, he still placed all his attention on the golden lotus stone flower and carefully sensed it. He could clearly see that the origin power released by the golden lotus stone flower was first fused with the 5 Milky Way circles around it. The 5 Milky Way circles also entered a state of fusion with the golden lotus stone flower. Then, the 5 Milky Way circles absorbed the origin power of the world fragment. Under Su Fang's control, the origin power could be absorbed from the 5 Milky Way circles. This made him quickly realize that the 5 Milky Way circles seemed to have become a bridge for him to fuse with the golden lotus stone flower. It allowed him to start fusing with the world fragment. Previously, he used Heaven's retribution to attack, and then waited for the world fragment to absorb the origin power before he could absorb it. But now, with the 5 Milky Way circles, he didn't need to absorb the origin power. The golden lotus stone flower would automatically release the origin power and fuse with the 5 Milky Way circles. In the end, Su Fang didn't need to control the world fragment, as he could gradually fuse with it. Forget it if I don't understand. Let's deal with the primordial god world first. Su Fang slowly adjusted his breathing and said helplessly, I originally wanted to reach the 9th tier of the immortal realm. But I didn't expect that because of the birth of the 13th yang meridian, the energy in my body would be in a normal state. I can only fight immortals with the 8th tier of the immortal realm. Luckily, I have the 13th yang meridian. Now, my overall strength has increased again. I estimate that my current strength should be close to the peak of Small World. Only realm masters Watian, the 6 lords of fertility, the emperor of the origin god world, and the lord of 5 poisons from the mortal world can surpass me by a little. Swish! After a while of probing and forming the 5 Milky Way circles, his aura suddenly disappeared. The Wuling Goblin suddenly turned into a stone belt and took Su Fang away from the core. Its speed was obviously faster than before. Obviously, as Su Fang merged with the primordial god world's world essence, the Wuling Goblin had amazing control over the primordial god world. But it still took them half a month to reach the surface. The Wuling Goblin turned into its human form. Master, where do we go next? Of course, to the primordial god world's world barrier. It's time to confront the primordial god world head-on. Without thinking too much, the two of them broke through the sky. When they reached the bottom of the world barrier, Su Fang also sensed the two immortals' illusory existences. The more illusory they were, the more likely they were. They quietly left the world barrier and arrived at the Milky Way. Su Fang suddenly saw a phalanx of tens of thousands of people in front of him. They had embarrassed smiles on their faces. It was obvious that they were plotting something. He and the Wuling Goblin came to the front of the phalanx of tens of thousands of people without any aura. They activated the primordial god world's world essence and the power of the Holy Emperor Divine Origin Scripture. In this way, the divine aura that Su Fang was releasing toward the tens of thousands of people was like the power of the Xinyuan Empire. Voice of the Heavenly Demon, World Control. An invisible divine aura from the Holy Emperor Divine Origin Scripture spread among the tens of thousands of people. He put his hands together, and a twisting demonic aura burst out of the void. Instantly, the tens of thousands of people were caught off guard and rushed into the depths of their minds. Puff! Puff! Come! The divine aura of a doctrine artifact suddenly appeared in their minds. Coupled with the voice of the heavenly demon's continuous attacks and the sealing of their yang souls, these people were directly sucked into the doctrine artifact. Who is it? Suddenly, a throne floated over, along with countless experts of the Xinyuan Empire. Chapter 841. Whoosh, 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 along with the tiger roars and furious roars. Su Fang was wantonly sucking the 10,000 experts into the mini-universe celestial gourd. He also released his power at the Great Completion Realm. He saw that there were many powerful warriors of the Xinyuan Empire sitting on the thrones. The leader was not the great Emperor Dipper that he was familiar with. It was Lord Nan, one of the 4 lords. Even though Su Fang had no contact with Lord Nan, he had spied on the Xinyuan Empire many times. He was very familiar with the 4 lords of the Xinyuan Empire. You are so powerful. Lord Nan has survived 3 disasters and can ascend to the great world. But I killed the great Emperor Dipper in the past. I can kill you this time. Su Fangda activated the power of the world. Soon, tens of thousands of people were sucked into the doctrine artifact. Suddenly, tens of thousands of people from the Shenyuan Empire came. Lord Nan, one of the four lords, appeared in the galaxy with a handsome face in his 60s. As soon as he saw Su Fong, he was surprised. Su Fong and Wooling Goblin stood side by side and flew into the sky. There were tens of thousands of people. I didn't expect that the powerful Lord Nan would know about me, an ant from the mortal world. Lord Nan grabbed the throne with both hands. You stole from the Renhuang world and killed my third prince and many powerful warriors. Su Fong, even if you turn into ashes, my empire will still know you. TSK. Suddenly, galactic wind blew from both sides of the galaxy. Su Fong looked around and saw tens of thousands of people from both sides surrounding him. The Shenyuan Empire reacted quickly. He could also see that the soldiers in the square formation had prepared the mighty divine cannon. Once it was fired, it would be as powerful as the fairy realm. Its destructive power was astonishing. Perhaps the Shenyuan Empire would even increase the power of the mighty Shenyuan cannon. The South Monarch raised his arm and shouted, Su Fong, you still have a chance to live. Submit to my emperor and hand over the human sovereign world. Then, my empire will help you become an immortal. In less than 500 years, you can ascend to the greater world. That's all. Su Fong sighed, looking dissatisfied. You're still not satisfied with becoming an immortal in 500 years? There's so many people here. Let alone 500 years. Even 50,000 years wouldn't be enough for them to become an immortal. If you have such a shortcut, why don't you choose it? Of course I have a choice, Prince Nan. My choice is to suppress all of you. Then, it won't take 500 years. It will only take 100 years for my Su Fong to ascend to the outside world. Ignorant brat. You're right about that. I'm just a commoner in your Shenyuan Empire. However, my heart is higher than the sky. My ambition is formed and the sky is my boundary. You can say that I'm ignorant, but I hope that I can continue to be ignorant because that will allow me to surpass everything. Since you don't want to live, then there's no need to waste words. Open fire and blast this ignorant brat into pieces. Not even his corpse will remain. Nanwang suddenly pointed at the sky like an angry bull. Buzz, buzz, on both sides of the galaxy, among the tens of thousands of people, a large number of mighty divine origin cannons suddenly appeared, controlled by a large number of experts. Wooling Goblin suddenly shielded Su Fong. Master! Seeing Wooling Goblin's action, Su Fong suddenly felt very gratified. Because unknowingly, as the years passed, the 20,000 big goblin that he had suppressed all surrendered to him during this period. Also, those countless experts that he had suppressed allowed him to concentrate on dealing with the primordial god world, conquer the small world, and establish a force in this small world. Let's not wait for everyone to come. Let's kill to our heart's content first. We can catch them off guard and disrupt their deployment. Su Fong issued an order to Wooling Goblin. In a breath, Su Fong and Wooling Goblin's speed reached a speed faster than teleportation. They had reached the speed of shuttling through the Door of Wonder. Open fire on the side of the Shenyuan Empire. On both sides of the army, hundreds of people were responsible for one mighty, divine origin cannon. Their hand seals condensed a terrifying energy and merged it with a special cannonball. When a cannonball was shot out, it was like a terrifying Dharma treasure. In a blink, dozens of cannonballs were shot toward the galaxy 100 miles away. In a breath's time, a large number of dazzling clouds suddenly appeared in the galaxy. Then, there was a deafening explosion that shook the entire galaxy. At this moment, the earth-shattering explosion shook the Shenyuan Empire, the Renhuang world, and the 100,000 troops hidden in the distance. Even the faraway, immortal primordial realm could feel the tremors. Open fire. This time, there were hundreds of cannonballs in the two armies. It seemed that they had made up their minds to blow Su Fong to smithereens. Roar, roar, 3 breaths later. Suddenly, there was a devil-like sound that came from the galaxy around Nanwang's army. Kill! In the next breath, Su Fong appeared above the 3 armies. He waved his hand, and one big goblin after another attacked. Black Ridge Demon King, Vermilion Emperor, Sky-Reaching Venerable Demon King, 9-Headed Demon King, Brute Force Demon King, and 9-Segment Earth Dragon. These 6 peerless great demons unleashed their Tao treasures without holding back. They also unleashed shocking amounts of demonic poison and demonic fire. Each great demon unleashed a terrifying power that could surpass 3 natural disasters. Nan Wang was shocked as he saw the 6 beams of demonic light coming toward the 3 armies. Where did so many big goblins come from? And they are all releasing their Tao artifacts. At this time, the mighty divine origin cannon lost its effect in a short-range battle. This kind of long-range weapon was suitable for large-scale battles and to deal with some normal cultivators. But against peerless experts like Su Fong and the Big Goblin, it would lose its effect. In an instant, the 6 big goblin kings attacked the 3 armies at the same time. No matter how many people there were, the big goblins killed their way through. They didn't care if they were from the Xinyuan Empire or Immortals. "Kid, why didn't you wait for us?" At this time, there was only one person in Su Fong's eyes. It was Nan Wang, who had chosen to retreat. He used his speed to get closer. A thought came to his mind. It was the Lord of 5 Poisons. Then, it was the Green Feather King and Li Ziqing. Previously, I was also thinking of waiting for us to meet up before attacking together. But that way, the Xinyuan Empire would also be prepared. They have such an astonishingly mighty Xinyuan cannon. At that time, how many people would we lose? It would be better for me to first catch them off guard and disrupt their formation. Only then can you all hurry over. Su Fong told the old antiques his idea. In the end, the 3 of them had nothing to say. This was the boldness of the strong. As long as one had the ability and strength, one could break the rules. In this world, everyone and everything was affected and shackled by rules. Usually, the one who could break the rules was a genius like Su Fong. Today, the light of the galaxy belonged to him. Since that was the case, the 3 old antiques all thought that it was time for him to release the light. The Xinyuan Empire was in a mess. There were almost 100,000 people. Even though they were only facing 6 big goblins, each big goblin had a peerless doctrine artifact. Their strength had reached the peak of the mortal world. They also had poisonous gas and demonic poison. Since their chi was naturally stronger than humans, any power they released would be destructive. Furthermore, most of these troops were Ascension Transformation Realm cultivators. There was a huge gap between them and Pinnacle Great Demons. If they could use the Divine Origin Cannon, they could stop the big goblin from a distance. But at such a close distance, they could only form formations and use their Dharma artifacts. Whoosh, 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 a large number of arrows were shot neatly at the big goblin. The galaxy was filled with stars. This was the terrifying army of the Xinyuan Empire. Prince Nan's reaction was probably fast. He controlled the situation and ordered the square formation to start a new round of attacks. The Divine Origin Army not only had long-range attacks, but also close-range attacks. Arrows. This was the obvious choice. Moreover, the arrows were specially made and valuable. They formed a large net of arrows to trap the big goblin. The arrows could kill any Ascension Realm Master. A large number of arrows could even hurt a Ascension Realm Master. But to the big goblin, who had thick skin and flesh, it was like scratching an itch. Even so, the arrow formation was more or less a hindrance to the big goblin. At least, it affected their attack speed. After a few breaths, tens of thousands of Xinyuan Empire cultivators had died tragically at the hands of the 6 big goblins. Prince Nan, 2 figures suddenly appeared beside Su Fong, who was activating the power of the world. It was the Chaos Fairy and the immortal Heavenly Lord. Sister Bai, you guys wait in the dark. Maybe you can force Jing Suifeng and that Celestial Master Lung Exine out. Once they come out, only you guys can stop them directly. But I don't think they will show up at this time. After all, not even 1/10 of the 10 million cultivators have been lost. Before dealing with Prince Nan, Su Fong gathered the immortal turtle and Bai Ling in the dark and asked them to hide in the dark. The main reason was to guard against the immortals. Su Fong's speed reached the extreme again. What was more fatal was that his speed was silent. Order every general to maintain the camp. There are already more than a dozen troops coming to help. In the turmoil, it was either arrows flying or magic treasures exploding out of control. The 10,000 seats suddenly disappeared. The dignified prince then lost his usual calmness and began to retreat under the protection of a group of masters. Drip, drip. Suddenly it rained. Maybe it was the rain, because Prince Nan and the thousands of masters protecting him suddenly heard some raindrops falling on their bodies. Some people found that it wasn't raindrops, but drops of blood. At first, they didn't care, thinking that it was a fallen master because a large amount of blood mist was floating around. But in less than 3 breaths, there were more drops of blood, and there were sizzling sounds coming from their bodies. Their puppets, robes, and even their physical defenses were being corroded by the drops of blood. Prince then also felt a burning pain on his shoulders, arms, and neck. When he saw that the blood was corroding his skin and affecting the condensation of his true chi, he immediately ordered, "There's poison. There should be a master of the 5 poison divine sect secretly releasing poison. Retreat." Thousands of people hurriedly flew to the primordial god world. The formation behind them was still dealing with the big goblin. No matter how far these 1,000 experts flew, there would always be cultivators left behind in the Milky Way, struggling and groaning in pain. It turned out that in a short period of time, their heads would fall off and their skin would rot away. They looked like people who had been skinned alive. More masters couldn't hold on. They either vomited blood or watched as their heads and skin peeled off, revealing flesh and blood. In the end, there were only 100 people following Prince Nan, but they were also gradually slowing down. Prince Nan scratched his head in horror. What kind of poison is this? Isn't it the 5 poison divine sects, 5 poisons? Jia, you're all my father's slaves. Don't even think about escaping. Suddenly, a blood-robed youth with an evil aura and a ruthless gaze appeared above them. He was the blood ghost True Devil. After saying that, he spat out a true devil blood plate, which swept towards the heavily injured experts behind him. Those poison giants were all sucked into the true devil blood plate. Run, run. This is the legendary blood ghost of the devil path. At this moment, Prince Nan had completely lost his bearing as a prince. He took the remaining 100 experts and fled for his life. But at this moment, an aurora had already silently swept towards him along with the trembling starry sky. Chapter 842. Prince Nan still could not find the aurora. He had to run for his life. A mere blood-wraith true demon was enough to scare him away. He had no other choice. Not even Prince Shui could recover from the blood-wraith true demon's blood poison after losing his left arm. Su Fong had obtained many poisonous insects from the Xinjia Gate. He had given them all to the blood-wraith true demon. That was why its blood poison had reached the level of the immortal realm and was unique. It was a blood monster and a poison monster. Prince Nan's scalp had fallen off, revealing his bloody head. His skin was peeling off, rotting and festering. It was a disgusting sight. More importantly, the blood poison would corrode his meridians and genuine chi once it entered his body. He could not control his genuine chi to stop the poison. Prince Nan had to run for his life. Only when he returned to the primordial god universe could someone cure him. Swish, poof, behind him, the blood-wraith true demon was controlling the plate of blood to devour and suppress the powerful warriors that were controlled by the poison. Only a small portion of the 1,000 survived. At this moment, Prince Nan had just flown far away under the protection of a group of experts. However, the aurora sword shadow suddenly pierced into his heart. My lord! Oh no, my lord is wounded. Inform the emperor to protect my lord, or we will all die. Dozens of powerful warriors surrounded Prince Nan, regardless of the blood poison. The starry daylight's sword had pierced into Prince Nan's heart and went through his body. It was such a peerless treasure. One stab was enough to end Prince Nan's life. I can't believe that I, Prince Nan, am about to ascend to the greater world. Why? Why is the heavens so blind? I, Prince Nan, have fought for my entire life. How many families, empires, and forces have I slaughtered? This king was so close to ascending to the greater worlds with the immortal realm. Why did I end up like this? I can't accept this. Prince Nan, who was on the verge of death, mumbled to himself as he lay in the river of stars under the protection of several powerful warriors. The powerful warriors next to him were in despair as well. Prince Nan's flesh was corroded by the blood poison. His head and cheekbones were exposed. It was disgusting. No matter how loyal they were to him, none of them wanted to touch him. You won't be able to escape either. Seal. Su Fong shuttled through the stars in the sky and immediately intercepted the 100 or so experts with the blood wraith and true demon in the center. He wantonly controlled the surrounding galaxies and said domineeringly, "Those who obey me will live, and those who oppose me will die. Do you want to follow King Nan and die? Or do you want to live and not be tortured by the poison? It's your choice." Plop. Over 100 people immediately knelt down helplessly and gave up resisting. At this moment, they were like mortals who were beyond cure. They began to struggle and moan in pain. The true demon blood plate immediately sucked them away, and the blood wraith true demon followed Su Fong's orders and ran to work with the 6 big goblin to deal with even more Xinyuan Empire experts. Su Fong grabbed the dying King Nan, but it was too late. King Nan's brain had been completely corroded by the blood poison. All that was left was a bloody skull. His eyeballs were gone, and his divine aperture and young infant were gone as well. He grabbed the corpse and let it float to the side. Then he used a supreme seal to pour it into the true demon blood plate and the miniature universe immortal pot. About half an incense stick's worth of time later, the experts that had been suppressed were released. "Since you've submitted to me and been suppressed by me, you no longer have anything to do with the Xinyuan Empire. You're now Su Fong's subordinates. This is an aphrodisiac pill that contains extraordinary power. Once you take it, immediately go to the human emperor world and recover your strength as quickly as possible. Then we'll take down the origin god world together. If you don't behave, I won't be polite and will wipe out your young infant." "Yes, master." More than 10,000 experts helplessly accepted the aphrodisiac pill and turned to fly back to the battlefield. Then Su Fong sent the true demon blood plate toward the blood wraith true demon. With the true demon blood plate, the blood wraith's power was even more terrifying, and he could use it to suppress countless experts. When he turned around, he didn't expect to see so many experts glaring at him from the origin god world. There were at least 200,000 of them. The tycoons of the royal family from the Xinyuan Empire led their experts over. A few 100,000 people were just a drop in the ocean for the Xinyuan Empire, which had tens of millions of soldiers. "Save King Nan." The tycoons of the royal family roared furiously. Tut, tut, tut. The entire Star River began to surge toward Su Fong like ferocious beasts. It was too terrifying. "You still want to save your King Nan?" Su Fong was like an ant facing an army of 10,000 galloping horses. He waved his hand and said, "This is King Nan, one of the 4 kings of the Xinyuan Empire. You can't save him. I killed the great Emperor Dipper in the past. Today, King Nan also died at my hands. Now, the other kings and your entire royal family will die at my hands. This is your fate." Damn it. Many tycoons of the royal family were enraged when they saw King Nan's body. They were about to eat Su Fong and the Star River. "All right, since the Xinyuan Empire is so powerful, I won't hold back. I'll take as many of you as you come today." Small universe divine pot. So many overlords and an army were rushing over like locusts. Su Fong actually went to meet them head-on by himself. Hundreds of thousands of Xinyuan Empire's overlords had never expected this. All of a sudden, Su Fong spat out a beam of immortal light above the hundreds of thousands of experts, as if he was swallowing clouds. A teapot-like Taoist treasure suddenly shot out a shocking divine power above the hundreds of thousands of experts. It turned into a shocking immortal light that shot out from the mouth of the teapot and formed a waterfall. It poured down from the high altitude of the galaxy, forming an indescribable silver waterfall. The small universe divine pot isn't just a defensive Tao artifact. It contains a lot of deity chi stored in a large world. Once it's spat out, it can release a peerless deity light attack from a large world. Although it can only release deity chi, can mortals resist such power? Su Fong put his hands behind his back. The Tao artifact's origin spirit also said, "Master, I can't replenish my energy in a small world if I lose a lot of deity chi like this. I can only go to the great celestial world. The most important thing right now is to deal with the origin god world. I'm going to ascend to the great celestial world soon anyway. When I get there, this problem will be solved. Understood. The small universe divine pot 66 continued to spit out more deity chi. There seemed to be an invisible giant in the galaxy above the hundreds of thousands of overlords. It was holding a huge Tao artifact teapot and pouring deity chi on their heads. The shockwaves formed by the deity chi made the hundreds of thousands of Xinyuan Empire's overlords feel like ants on a hot pan. Xianhuang's Six Paths Pagoda, a peerless natal Dharma treasure, supported by the power of the world. In the blink of an eye, Su Fong arrived above a large number of Xinyuan Empire's cultivators, and a six-layered Xianguang Dharma treasure came out of his body. Su Fong disappeared. Like a balloon, he was blown up by the six-layered mystic light. The six-layered golden and silver pagoda expanded to 10,000 feet in size. The six-layered pagoda doors opened at the same time. Taking advantage of the fact that the mini heaven and earth immortal pot had severely injured the army of the Xinyuan Empire, the six-layered pagoda doors released a terrifying suction force, swallowing the powerful cultivators one by one. This was the supreme power of a top Dharma treasure and a natal Dharma treasure. Kill. Release the Dharma treasure formation and destroy the pagoda. The overlords of the royal family were in a mess. They couldn't deal with the small universe divine pot, so they could only disperse the army and let the Xianhuang Six Paths Pagoda absorb the cultivators in the sky. The overlords of the royal family gathered and activated their royal grade Dharma treasures. Thousands of them floated out and formed a Dharma treasure formation. The Dharma treasure formation shook and surged in the galaxy. Whoosh! At this moment, Su Fong was nowhere to be seen, but there was a sword shadow among the overlords of the royal family. It attacked in a strange way and cut off the heads of the overlords of the royal family. It affected a large number of Dharma treasures. At the same time, the Xianhuang Six Paths Pagoda also changed its position to avoid the thousands of Dharma treasures. I have a Dharma artifact and the Xianhuang Six Paths Pagoda and the Starry Daylight Sword. I'm not afraid of immortals. Let me show you what a natal Dharma treasure is and what a cultivator of the world is. Where was he? It turned out that Su Fong, who had completely released his natal Dharma treasure, had perfectly merged with the Xianhuang Six Paths Pagoda. He also activated the more than 20,000 big goblin inside and released Dharma power to persist in the Dharma treasure. Su Fong also activated the ethereal enlightenment and the power of the world to strengthen himself, which was equivalent to strengthening the peerless Dharma treasure, the Xianhuang Six Paths Pagoda. Boom! Boom! The Xianhuang Six Paths Pagoda became 10,000 feet tall again. With the speed of shuttling through the door, the thousands of magic treasures that were rushing over suddenly swept past the large number of panicked cultivators of the Xinyuan Empire. The six-story door also had a terrifying suction force that sucked in those cultivators, along with the starlight, as well as those cultivators. This state is too good. I have the power of the world, and my energy is never depleted. I also have the support of more than 20,000 big goblin. No realm lord is more powerful than me. Su Fong was truly in a small world. In front of hundreds of thousands of cultivators, as well as in the surroundings and in the distance, he had fully displayed his abilities. A Tao Artifact A, Natal Dharma Treasure. The power of a realm lord. A supreme divine power. A perfected physical body. A supreme yang soul. When all of these were combined, Su Fong believed that he had the ability to fight with realm lords like the six lords of fertility head-on. He was also very confident that he could defeat those who were truly invincible in small worlds. Cultivators, listen to me. Since you're in my hands, if you don't behave, I'll kill you now and let you be obedient and bear my sealing power. On the sixth floor of the Xianhuang Six Paths Pagoda, there were already more than 60,000 overlords of the Xinyuan Empire that had been suppressed. With so many people, Su Fong did not hold back. He used the heavenly demon's voice and the peerless power of the Xianhuang's Six Paths Pagoda to extract tens of thousands of overlords' wills and send the sealing power into their minds. Just like what the Blood Wraith True Demon had said, many people would become Su Fong's slaves. At this moment, in the Milky Way where the battle was about to end, there were no mortal Emperor world experts, and the five poisons poison gas was also scattered into the Milky Way. Of the hundreds of thousands of immortal primordial domain experts, 1/3 had been severely poisoned. The rest were more or less poisoned. I still want to kill Su Fong. The cultivators from the immortal primordial domain had suffered heavy losses. The Xinyuan Empire could not send too many people either. The great Emperor Dipper led his experts to guard against any changes in the surroundings. The heretical crown prince, Prince Shui, who used to be a disciple of the Celestial Bestowment sect, looked at the primordial god world. He saw the shocking Tao treasure, the Xianhuang Six Paths Pagoda, and the turbulent Milky Way. I didn't expect Su Fong to be able to use a Tao treasure to such an extent. It's unbelievable. His natal treasure is a king-grade Dharma treasure that's close to the peak of a small world. So you're actually this strong. Fortunately, I didn't rashly attack Su Fong. There's still plenty of time in the future. I don't want to fight to the death with you now and waste all my energy on this insignificant small world. Prince Shui was shocked. This was probably the first time he had seen Su Fong, who had stirred up the Milky Way. Chapter 843. The Lord of Five Poisons has fled in defeat. Don't chase him. The great Emperor Dipper was a little hysterical. He controlled his supreme, sovereign aura and released his voice to the experts from the Xinyuan Empire and the immortal primordial domain. Look, please move. The leader of the Doichi, Master Limitless, led a large number of experts under his command to gather the cultivators who had been tortured by the five poisons. Not many of them had died. The Lord of Five Poisons had attacked them midway with poison. Even though they had been poisoned, these cultivators would not die in a short time. Under the command of Master Limitless and the other experts, they formed a formation. Master Limitless led the elders under his command and the few experts he had recruited to greet the great Emperor Dipper politely. My lord, I will bring everyone back to rest immediately. No. After being attacked midway, the experts recruited from the immortal primordial domain were severely traumatized. Master Limitless wanted to bring the Doichi and these cultivators back to the primordial god world to rest. However, he did not expect the Xinyuan Empire to be so resolute. He pointed at the waterfall of immortal spiritual energy in front of them and said, "Pass down the order immediately. Assemble the formation. We will move out in 2 hours to suppress Su Fong." Yes. Master Limitless lowered his head and cupped his fists. Not long after, he left with the other experts and arrived at the formation of the Doichi experts. A few Doichi elders surrounded Master Limitless. Leader, the great Emperor Dipper is really a vampire. He is using us as cannon fodder. We're not pigs or dogs. The dojo was destroyed by Su Fong. We cannot return to the immortal primordial domain. The Xinyuan Empire must have seen this and attacked our weakness. If we do not listen to the orders of the Xinyuan Empire, we will have no place in the Star River. Leader, what should we do? What should we do? You know better than me what the Xinyuan Empire is thinking. Do you still need to ask? They will not let us go. Do we have a choice? Pass down the order immediately. Everyone is to prepare to join the battle. However, secretly tell everyone to preserve their strength. Don't risk your lives for the Xinyuan Empire. The experts around him knew what the great Emperor Dipper was thinking. So what? Fortunately, Limitless was the leader. He suppressed the atmosphere and calmed everyone down. Then, he secretly conveyed his true thoughts to the experts. Not long after, the Xinyuan Empire issued an order and led hundreds of thousands of troops towards the Star River battlefield in front of the Origin God World. Renhuang World at this moment, in the primordial God World, one could still see the star-like Renhuang realm slowly moving through the star field. The Lord of Five Poisons, the Green Feather King, Li Ziqing, Li Haojia, and other powerful cultivators were following the big goblin to migrate the human sovereign world to the primordial god world. Soon, the 100,000-strong army arrived in time and finally met up at the Star River. Not only that, but the tens of thousands of cultivators who had been suppressed by Su Fong in the Star River battlefield were also uneasy and fearful. Su Jun had transformed the Star River to welcome them into the Renhuang world. At this moment, a large number of experts were floating in the Renhuang world. The Lord of Five Poisons suddenly turned around and swept his gaze across a large number of experts who had reached the peak of the flying celestial realm. Everyone, Su Fong dared to attack the primordial god world alone. How can we retreat? Since everyone is gathered here, I believe that all of this has been arranged by the heavens. We can't let Su Fong fight alone. Today, we must have a decisive battle with the primordial god world. The Green Feather King also released a strange smoke-like demonic aura and shouted in the air, "Today we'll go all out and fight for a future." Out? In fact, everyone could see from Su Fong's every move that he was determined to fight the Xinyuan Empire. When people are often forced into a desperate situation, they will always erupt with unimaginable potential. Even a rabbit will bite when cornered. Now, it was either the Renhuang world conquering the Xinyuan Empire or the Xinyuan Empire flattening the Renhuang world and killing everyone. Everyone here had long been connected to the Renhuang world and would advance and retreat together with Su Fong. Since that was the case, they might as well go all out like Su Fong. Li Haojie released a shocking amount of demonic aura in the air. It should not be his own true chi, but from the Origin Suppression Demon Transformation Heavenly Book. This demonic aura was very special and strengthened the bodies of thousands of big goblin. Their migration to the Renhuang world began to accelerate. The Renhuang world carried tens of thousands of experts, as well as hundreds of thousands of experts who were hibernating in the Renhuang world. They were quickly approaching the primordial god world. Inside the Renhuang world, in addition to the hundreds of thousands of experts who were on standby and the tens of thousands of experts who belonged to the Xinyuan Empire who had just arrived and were recuperating, there was another group of people. The leader was Su Fong's father, Su Yaotian. Behind him were family Su's former clansmen, all of whom were very familiar faces. There were also many experts that Su Fong had suppressed before, such as Feng Xingzhen, Mo Feng Jun, Supreme Venerable Demon King, Wan Mo, and others. Even Venerable Gu had brought Qi Yuan Ao and some other experts from the depths of the Renhuang world. Su Yaotian looked at everyone present. He could clearly see the same nervousness in everyone's eyes and the same breathing. Even though most of the people here were experts who had been suppressed by Su Fong and had their yang soul shackled, there was no indifference toward the Renhuang world in their eyes. Instead, they felt the same way. Su Yaotian said to everyone with relief, "Our responsibility is to guard the world's barrier. Once the battle starts in the Milky Way, we have to stop the Xinyuan Empire's soldiers from killing their way in. With the Renhuang world, my son Su Fong is invincible. We can't participate in the battle and can only do our best. The Renhuang world doesn't rely on my son alone, it relies on everyone. As long as we work together, we will definitely be able to cross the primordial god world. Let's work together to overcome this crisis." In such a situation, everyone's hearts were indeed united. They raised their arms and shouted, gazing at the Milky Way with worry like Su Yaotian. The primordial god world. In the two Milky Way battlefields, the six big goblin were fighting against an army of hundreds of thousands. In the Milky Way that was very close to the primordial god world, Su Fong was using 3 artifacts to fight against hundreds of thousands of experts. Su Fong, who had fused with his natal artifact, was using this ability to suppress countless people. Previously, he had suppressed more than 60,000 experts. Now, there were nearly 100,000 trapped in the Six Paths Pagoda. Great Emperor Dipper. A large number of experts from the Xinyuan Empire were still in formation to deal with the immortal essence waterfall of the mini-universe immortal pot and Su Fong, who was in his natal artifact state. No matter how strong a single person was, he was still insignificant when faced with the cooperation of countless people. All of a sudden, the 10,000 zhong profound illusion Six Paths Pagoda disappeared, and so did the Tao treasure. Su Fong turned into a star trail, and before the army from the other side of the galaxy could arrive, he was the first to retreat. The six big goblins also retreated from the other Milky Way. It was estimated that the six big goblins had joined forces and slaughtered no less than 200,000 experts from the Xinyuan Empire. Not a single one was left alive for Su Fong. It was their fault for being so bloodthirsty. Until they met with Su Fong's Milky Way, the murderous intent in their eyes was still boiling. The six big goblins were like six most loyal guards, protecting Su Fong in the Milky Way. He released the Xianguang of the Renwang world and condensed a throne. After he sat on it, he and the six big goblins faced the army of the Xinyuan Empire alone. But the Renwang world came from behind him across the Milky Way. He was not alone. Su Fong was a perfection stage expert who cultivated countless divine abilities and controlled the power of the world. He could sense the Renwang world of the Milky Way behind him. The breath of countless cultivators and the power of faith were surging towards him. He could also clearly sense the Lord of Five Poisons, Green Feather Monarch, Li Ziqing, Su Jinhua, and other experts. He could even sense the family Su clansmen, Venerable Gu, Lan Haicheng, and Xiao Mei in the Milky Way world. It was as if at this moment there was an ethereal feeling like the stars had arrived at the end of heaven and earth, fusing with the world. The Renhuang world quickly arrived at Su Fong's side under the migration of thousands of big goblins. A large number of experts flew out from the Renhuang world, led by Green Feather Monarch and the Lord of Five Poisons. Li Haojia was at the Milky Way side, ordering the thousands of big goblins. You big goblins, stay here and protect the Renhuang world. Everyone is here. Su Fong was sitting on the throne. When he turned around, he saw familiar faces as well as close to 500,000 experts. The Lord of Five Poisons, Green Feather Monarch, Li Ziqing, Su Jianhua, Qin Yuanho, and dozens of others had gathered with Su Fong in the Milky Way ahead of the hundreds of thousands of experts. Green Feather Monarch laughed. "Kid, are you all right? You have a good physique. How could you be all right?" Li Ziqing happily patted Su Fong's shoulder. "I'm fine now, but I don't know what will happen in the future." The Lord of Five Poisons looked at the primordial god world solemnly. At this moment, everyone looked over with him, but no one's gaze was as empty as the Lord of Five Poisons. This scene is so familiar. Over 100,000 years ago, I used this method several times to look down on the primordial god world from the Milky Way. I hope this is the last time. We can't fail again, and we can't start over. Master, this should be the last time. This is our last chance. Success or failure will be determined by this. If we don't take down the primordial god world, we won't turn back. The sect master's words sounded like an emotional sigh, but was actually a battle cry burning in his heart. Su Fong immediately looked at the primordial god world and nodded slightly. He controlled his throne and slowly crossed the Milky Way with the other big goblins. Behind them were hundreds of thousands of cultivators. They're finally here. The Lord of Five Poisons, Su Fong, is just a bunch of chickens and dogs. They can't even be brought to the stage. The primordial god whirled above the world barrier. Over 10,000 thrones were gathered. At the very center, there were only 3 kings of the 4 directions. They floated beside the primordial god emperor. The great emperor Dipper coldly swept his gaze across the Milky Way. The South Emperor must avenge the South Emperor. It's just a few 100,000 people, but the primordial god world has tens of millions of cultivators. We must skin them one by one. The primordial god emperor was like the overlord of the Milky Way. He exuded an astonishing emperor's aura. Tens of thousands of thrones were gathered around the world barrier. Send orders to all the dukes and generals. Count the troops and arrange the troops. Gather around the world barrier. We must crush this force with absolute strength in a short time. Woo! 1 hour later, the sound of a bugle horn resounded through the Milky Way from the depths of the Xinyuan Empire. Tut, tut, tut. Waves of aura surged through the Milky Way, as if they were stepping on the Milky Way. It turned out that countless cultivators and armies were flying out of the primordial god world's world barrier. They were majestic and very purposefully gathered in different Milky Ways. There were too many of them. They were so densely packed that they covered the sky and almost completely covered the primordial god world. The primordial god world has tens of millions of people. Before, when I joined forces with the Big Goblin, we killed more than 300,000 experts. That's just a drop in the ocean for the primordial god world. With the power of a perfected saint, Su Fang's eye power could see the primordial god world's gathering troops. He looked at the powerhouses around him. They have too many experts. Some of them are the leaders of cultivation forces, as well as many hermits. There are also the big shots of the royal family. There are at least 100,000 existences who have 3 calamities. That's countless times more than us. That's because they haven't encountered a true, peerless big goblin yet. King Greenfeather was extremely disdainful. He was right. How could there be a second big goblin of the rocks in the countless minor worlds? The enemy is strong, and we're weak. There's a huge difference in strength. Any schemes are useless in the face of this absolute difference in strength. We can only use courage and strength to kill our way to victory. Looking around, Su Fang said, "Let's show them who's boss first. Everyone, unleash the spell formation. Wei Wei, release your magical power and true energy into the Starry River. After that, I'll unleash my control over the world and unleash my ultimate divine ability, Starry River Control." Chapter 844. After Su Fang finished speaking, the 5 poison sect master, Green Feather Monarch, Li Ziqing, Su Jinhua, and Li Haojia continued to advance with Su Fang towards the countless armies and cultivators in front of the primordial god world. The magnates began to form hand seals and condense their dharma power and true chi into an array formation. There was almost no galaxy. Su Fang began to absorb all the magic power in the formation. It was the power of familiar cultivators, as well as the power of hundreds of thousands of peerless experts. World divine might, ethereal true, dispelling illusory, and true dispelling illusions, Star River, divine image. A single person's power was limited. No matter how extraordinary Su Fang's abilities were, there was no way he could deal with 1 million or 10 million cultivators. But what if someone could gather the power of countless people and unleash a peerless power? And yet, Su Fang had done just that. He had used his divine abilities to absorb the power of hundreds of thousands of cultivators and then unleash it. The entire river of stars was filled with an ethereal aura that seemed to have been fused with him. In this state of fusion, any aura, floating particles, and substances invisible to the naked eye in this galaxy could be sensed by him. He could even see that the power of the great perfection had reached an infinite height under the support of hundreds of thousands of people. Fire. 50 miles, the 2 sides were only a bit apart in this star river. Millions of soldiers were gathered in front of the primordial god world. They were led by various kings and vassals. Once Su Fang led his subordinates into the 50-mile star field, the primordial god world's army began to gather. Mighty primordial god cannons, tens of thousands of them, formed a neat array of cannons. There were about 1,000 cannons in each row. Suddenly, the energy mystic light condensed in every cannon shook backward almost at the same time. Streaks of fiery light rushed into the star system and illuminated the cold and desolate star system. They're getting closer. This was probably the first time that the countless cultivators on Su Fang's side had seen over 1,000 cannon fire head-on. It was as if over 1,000 magical treasures were flying through the galaxy and shooting towards them. Everyone was suppressing their killing intent. Su Fang clasped his hands together and maintained his posture. He watched as the cannons came closer and closer. When they were less than 10 miles away, he suddenly grabbed a star mark in the direction of the cannons. There seemed to be some dark luster that suddenly and quickly appeared in front of the cannon fire. Boom, boom, boom. It was unknown what kind of power these lights had, but they caused the cannonballs to explode, forming a huge mushroom cloud in the starry river high up in the sky. Because of the vibrations, the starry river formed wave after wave of vibrating star scars. The great explosion had even formed some ripping black holes, making it seem as if a huge hole had been burned out of the star river. Su Fong and the other masters continued to take advantage of the explosion to advance towards the primordial god world. Then, the second volley of mighty divine origin cannons fired. How strange! With the might of the mighty divine origin cannon, it should be able to accurately hit the enemy within 100 miles. At the center of the primordial god world was a place filled with the aura of emperors. The three great kings and great emperors were trying to figure out why the cannonballs hadn't hit Su Fong's camp. In less than 3 breaths of time, the second volley of cannonballs exploded very close to Su Fong's starry river, but it still didn't hit any cultivators. The great Emperor Dipper and the other higher-ups were in disbelief. Could it be that the mighty divine origin cannons had lost their aim? The primordial god emperor ordered 3,000 mighty divine origin cannons. The first 3 rows of cannons began to condense a large amount of xianguang. In about 10 breaths of time, the cannonballs were fired in unison, leaving behind a dazzling trail of fire in the starry river. The millions of powerhouses in the primordial god world stared at the next second, wondering what the outcome of the 3,000 cannonballs would be. But who would have thought that just as the 3,000 cannonballs crossed half of the starry river, they would explode in the starry river, setting off a shocking shockwave that turned into an interstellar storm that spread out in all directions. It was as if the starry river had suddenly formed continuous waves that wanted to lift everything up. The starry river of both sides was affected. When the primordial god emperor saw this result, he ordered the 10,000 mighty divine origin cannons to fire together. Wooling Goblin. At this moment, Su Fong's expression instantly changed. A wooling goblin appeared next to him, suddenly releasing a shocking amount of stone essence qi. Su Fong also released an earth-type xianguang that was similar to his own Dharma treasure. Then he clasped his hands together again, looking at the 10,000 mighty divine origin cannons that were about to fire. He fiercely grabbed at the air. Meteors fall from the heavens. 222 at this time. The 10,000 mighty divine origin cannons fired. Rustle, rustle. Above the Xinyuan Empire's camp, there seemed to be the sound of arrows piercing through the air, condensing above a large number of square formations. After the cannonballs were fired, the starry river shook. The starry river above suddenly condensed into fist-sized black meteors that were about 3 meters tall. It was unknown how they suddenly formed above the Xinyuan Empire's square formations. The black mass was like a storm that lost its center of gravity and rained down on the Xinyuan Empire's square formations. Everyone, be careful! Su Fong seemed to be shackled by an invisible force in the air. He couldn't form hand seals or even breathe as he wanted. The cannonballs that had torn the starry river apart started to explode in a large area. But this time, only most of them exploded. The rest continued to fall, and within a breath, they had already reached the top of countless overlords. Fortunately, Su Fong made a hand seal in time at this time, forming a starry barrier in front of him to block a large number of explosions. But the explosions caused hundreds of thousands of overlords to be unable to move an inch. The Xinyuan Empire didn't have it easy either. A large number of meteors fell. Even if the camps formed a defensive barrier, it was difficult to stop the meteors from falling from the sky. They were also like cannonballs, shattering the barrier and setting off waves after waves of tremors. The starry river is mine. Su Fong clasped his hands together again. This time, he shouted, and the overlords around him flew out, followed by hundreds of thousands of overlords behind him. The overlords formed a staircase formation and suddenly sped up, rushing towards the primordial god world. So, a large number of meteors appeared in the sky above the starry river formed by the meteors, but this time, they were all black stone swords that were a foot long. They almost formed a storm of stone swords, descending towards the Xinyuan Empire's camp. As for the cannons, many of the overlords didn't have time to react after being attacked by the meteors. Even if they did, they could only self-destruct when they saw the stone swords. they couldn't activate the cannons. The Lord of Five Poisons, Li Ziqing, Su Jinhua, Grand Elder He Zun, Grand Elder Hong Lian, Marquis Qin Yuanho, Sacred Monarch Guangzhou, Exalted Cultivator Yuezhen, and the other overlords each led tens of thousands of overlords and rushed towards the Xinyuan Empire's camp while the stone swords were attacking. Su Fong led the six big goblin to the mighty divine origin cannons first. The Crimson Emperor turned into his original form and suddenly appeared in the starry river, like an evil monster burning with demon chi. He opened his mouth and spat out. Swish! Swish! The wrath of the demon god was like a lizard pouncing on its prey, like a bloody tongue, striking the mighty divine origin cannons with the power of thunder. Boom! Boom! As expected of the ancient pig horse king, his Tao artifacts shattered the mighty divine origin cannons one by one, or else they would have been smashed in the air. Destroy the cannons first. But the royal family of the Xinyuan Empire also noticed the actions of Su Fong and the big goblin. Suddenly, arrows burst out from the camp around them. The arrows turned into a fierce attack that spanned tens of thousands of meters in the starry river. True body stone lock. The other big goblin, the Wooling Goblin, suddenly turned into a stone belt several times bigger than usual and then wrapped around Su Fong and the other big goblins. Clang! Clang! Boom! Boom! The arrows were powerful, but they could only cause a deafening explosion. They could not harm Demon King Black Ridge's stone body under the powerful impact. As for the Vermilion Emperor, he spat out the wrath of the demon god and turned it into a defensive Tao artifact. He was not in any danger. The cannons and formations of the Xinyuan Empire were mighty and awe-inspiring, shaking the world. Yet, they were still unable to kill these heaven-defying monsters. These were monsters that could surpass humans and survive tenaciously. Su Fong was relieved. Come out. The Wooling Goblin immediately extended a part of its body, which looked like a stone top, and began to move forward against the large number of arrows. The experts brought by the other giants were not attacked by the mighty divine origin cannons, but they also faced a storm of arrows from the direction of the primordial god world. The giants also took out all kinds of Dharma treasures, especially the Lord of Five Poisons, Li Ziqing, Green Feather King, Su Jinhua, and other experts. At this time, the Xinyuan Empire had the absolute advantage. Not only did they have a lot more people, but their attacks also dominated the Starry River. Su Fong and the six big goblins withstood the storm of attacks in the Starry River. It was as if they were swimming against the tide, and there was a chance that they would be consigned to eternal damnation at any moment. Moreover, under the leadership of the other giants, some experts were still hit by waves of arrows, and Su Fong's side began to suffer casualties. All of this was seen by Su Fong, and he clenched his teeth. Although he had expected this to happen, when it actually happened, he still found it hard to accept. Suddenly, his gaze became as sharp as a sword, and he roared, "Don't worry about that. Six big goblins, listen to my command. Kill! Kill! Yes, master. Kill them until they piss their pants." The Wooling Goblin suddenly revealed its demon form under the fierce and domineering arrows. The big goblins inside it released the light of Dharma treasures and rushed toward the square formations in front of them. Su Fong released his Dharma treasure defense, blocking the impact of the arrows that shocked his physical body. Suddenly, 6 layers of Xian Guang rose from his body. Xian Huang's 6 paths pagoda, fire elemental divine power, fire clouds descend. He had no choice. He also had to start his attack in advance. Originally, he wanted to kill the Xinyuan royal family members after entering the square formation, but he had no choice. The royal family members were hiding at the back, and there were so many square formations blocking them. If he did not break through the square formation, the large number of arrows would cause his side to suffer heavy losses. Originally, he wanted to preserve his strength. If he did not let the 6 big goblins come out now, and he himself used his divine power to break through the square formation, then the experts behind him would probably suffer heavy casualties. Buzz! 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 In his original state, he released his world divine power and illusory fire clouds. Together with the fire elemental divine power, of Xianhuang Six Paths Pagoda. His divine power extended to the Star River above the dozens of square formations. In an instant, a large number of burning flames from the illusory fire clouds formed a large fire cloud above the square formations, and the fire cloud burned and fell toward the square formations. Su Fang's use of the Star River and his divine power had reached the peak at this moment, just like before. At this moment, he alone was comparable to an army of thousands of men and horses. Even if there were thousands of men and horses in the Star River, they would not be able to resist his attack. In an instant, the square formations closest to him were attacked by the fire cloud. They exploded, and fell. The giants at the back waited for most of the arrows to disappear before they immediately rushed forward with their experts. The 6 big goblins also made it so that the square formations could not attack in a large area. Could that be the legendary power that the human emperor had comprehended from ethereal enlightenment? It should be, because that Shenyuan emperor of yours did not have such control in the Star River. This level of control is about the same as immortals like us. It seems that the legend about the human emperor is true. The human emperor's world does have secrets related to the ethereal enlightenment. I did not come down to the lower bound in vain. 2 immortals were at a secret realm in the Shenyuan Empire, paying attention to every movement in the Star River. Chapter 845. Su Fang unleashed an all-out attack from the Milky Way. Countless clouds of fire descended and struck the surrounding square formations. As expected, the number of arrows decreased. Look, please move. In addition, 6 big goblin had already entered, so it was almost impossible for arrows to explode in a large area. Su Fang seized this opportunity and ordered everyone to enter the primordial god world's square formations in the shortest amount of time possible. However, he alone created a cloud of fire vortex in the starry sky. Su Fang used one of the most common divine abilities of the limitless Tao arts, the limitless clone. The limitless Tao arts came from Doichi. Naturally, the limitless clone was not the only divine ability. The most powerful offensive divine abilities were the divine descent of universe and the limitless supreme clarity sword formation. Divine descent of universe. A large number of limitless clones formed hand seals with the main body. Several huge, distorted Xian Guang formed waves in the Milky Way and charged into the square formations. Limitless supreme clarity sword formation. Su Fang formed hand seals again and attacked. He was an outsider, but he used Doichi's limitless Tao arts to the extreme. First, the divine descent of universe turned the Milky Way into a distorted state of attack. Then, countless vast sword chis attacked in succession. Behind the square formations, the central camp of the Shenyuan Empire. The great Emperor Dipper and the other 2 marquises said to the Shenyuan Empire, "Emperor, I didn't expect this kid to be so difficult to deal with. He used Doichi's divine abilities to such a high level. We have to start showing our true strength." After this exchange, the Shenyuan Emperor actually felt threatened. The enemy's aura is too strong. We should indeed suppress them. Give the order. Let the supreme experts of the Shenyuan Empire take the lead and suppress the enemy. Okay. The 3 marquises immediately transmitted their voices. At this moment, countless experts in the square formations probably received the order. Because, other than the square formations on the left, right, and back of the primordial god world, dozens of square formations in the front began to condense their auras. This aura came from the sacred Emperor Divine Origin Scripture. The Shenyuan Empire was going to use its true strength to suppress Su Fang and the others. Hiss! Su Fang and the big goblin were using all sorts of mystical abilities and methods to open a path for the experts behind them. The phalanxes in the depths, as well as the surrounding phalanxes, suddenly released the familiar aura of the sage emperor's divine origin scripture. Then, one of the phalanxes suddenly released an astonishing giant barrier. Has the Shenyuan Empire finally unleashed its strongest power, one of the great divine abilities of the sacred tyrant body, sacred emperor, divine origin scripture? Upon seeing this, Su Fong secretly transmitted a voice transmission. The Xinyuan Empire has begun to use the Saint Emperor's divine origin scripture as their main attack. Everyone has been cultivating this mystical ability during this period of time. The Xinyuan Empire still doesn't know that we have already grasped their cultivation technique. Although they have the advantage in numbers, we don't have to be afraid of them. On the other hand, the heavenly holy tyrant body that was displayed by a large number of experts were countless golden armored giants. They joined together and roared in the sky. The other phalanxes gradually released similar barriers, especially the phalanxes that the 6 big goblins were attacking. Part of their attacks were blocked by the giant barrier, and they couldn't kill as many experts as before. Hum, 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 as the golden armored giants' barriers expanded in the galaxy, the phalanxes fused together and formed a phalanx of Emperor Qi. Sacred Master's Fist. Suddenly, Su Fong saw the golden armored phalanxes and the countless golden armored giants unleash huge golden fist prints that filled the sky. They charged toward the 6 big goblins and the galaxy that he was in. Su Fong was very shocked to see what kind of mystical ability it was. He saw the phalanxes and the golden fist prints that crossed the galaxy. Only then did he realize the true strength of the Xinyuan Empire. It was hard to resist. Even so, the 6 big goblins shot out beams of light from their Tao artifacts, combined with their own demonic aura and poison, and killed the terrifying golden fist prince. Su Fong released the power of the world and used the ethereal truth to display the sacred Emperor divine origin scripture. Suddenly, many golden armored giants appeared in the galaxy in front of the golden fist prince. Although they weren't as strong as the Xinyuan Empire, they also unleashed a powerful Sacred Master's Fist. How does Su Fong know the supreme, mystical ability of the imperial family of our empire? It must be those traitors like Qin Yuan Ho and Crown Prince Zhenhua who revealed the sacred Emperor Divine origin scripture to Su Fong. It was the same Sacred Master's Fist and the same heavenly holy tyrant body. The upper echelons of the imperial family were shocked. Everyone was shocked and angry. After all, Su Zhenhua and Qin Yuan Ho were following Su Fong. If they didn't tell Su Fong, how could someone use such a mystical ability? However, Su Fong's strength was too weak. Under the Sacred Master's Fist, a large part of his heavenly holy tyrant body was shattered. He almost coughed up blood from the shock. The other phalanxes also used the Sacred Master's Fist and released huge golden giants. They held long sabers and huge swords and surrounded the 6 big goblins. Su Fong was also gradually surrounded by these huge golden armored giants. The phalanxes all unleashed their heavenly holy tyrant body. There were so many of them that they occupied the galaxy. What a shocking scene. Even the 6 big goblins were trapped. Su Fong could only defend and break free from the encirclement. The gap between them and the primordial god world was becoming more and more obvious. Fortunately, the giants at the back led their experts to the front of the phalanxes. They also used the heavenly holy tyrant body and attacked the phalanxes. Both sides started to fight in the galaxy. Everyone, you guys stay here to suppress the Xinyuan Empire's army. I'll bring the 6 big goblins and attack the imperial family's camp. As long as we attack the imperial family's camp, the other phalanxes won't be able to be controlled. Su Fong, who was surrounded, felt a little more relaxed. After transmitting his voice to the giants, he immediately released the supreme Tao artifact's divine power and used the illusory fire cloud. The flames broke through the golden armored giants. He used the flaming cloud wings and the flaming cloud steps. In front of him, he used the supreme killing Dharma treasure, Starlight Sword, and began to cut through all obstacles. He even opened a path for the 6 big goblins. The 6 big goblins roared and rushed towards him. They directly shattered the golden fist mark and shattered the barrier. They began to pass through the phalanxes and attack the imperial family's phalanxes with the divine power of the Tao artifact. In the imperial family's camp, many of the giants released their auras. The great Emperor Dipper led a large number of experts. Kill this kid and the big goblin. The hundreds of thousands of cultivators behind us will no longer be a threat. The origin god emperor frowned. This person is very powerful to be able to use the Tao artifact to such an extent. The 6 big goblins also have 6 Tao artifacts. This is the most difficult to deal with. Take the initiative to attack. Set up the formation. At this moment, the third lord finally made his move. The origin god emperor and countless experts were left to protect him. The third lord led the giants under him and flew out of the imperial family's camp. A large number of giants from the origin god world charged over. Heavenly Emperor Incineration. The moment he attacked, he used one of the peerless divine abilities from the sacred Emperor Divine Origin Scripture, Heavenly Emperor Incineration. A huge explosion like a starburst formed in the starry river that Su Fong was rushing towards. The power of the explosion tore many black holes in the starry river. Su Fong and the 6 big goblins were immediately caught in the center of the explosion's power. The vortex formed in the galaxy. From afar, it looked like a terrifying storm that could destroy the world. This is the power that the Xinyuan Empire should have when it reached the peak of Small World. The surrounding power was enough to tear apart any of the 3 Calamity Realm giants. Su Fong and the 6 big goblins seemed to have fallen into a desperate situation. A young girl's voice came from the depths of the galaxy. "Brother, do you want me to make a move first?" Su Fong replied, "I will let the Vermilion Emperor make a move. Its strength is about the same as yours, but its wrath of the demon god cannot reach the level of the heavenly neck spirit ring. The Xinyuan Empire is indeed powerful, but no matter how powerful it is, it cannot surpass a small world and have the power of an immortal." Bai Ling and the Undying Tortoise were his trump cards. They were the 2 strongest helpers by his side. They were hidden in order to deal with Jing Suifeng and Immortal Master Lung Xin. A monster that was as strong as a bull roared out from among the monsters. Pig Horse King It attacked again. Flaming demonic patterns appeared on its demonic body, and its skin seemed to be made of magma. It was about to be swallowed and crushed by the terrifying power. As the only ancient mutated beast, the Vermilion Emperor could shoot out the wrath of the demon god. This Tao artifact was of extraordinary quality. It was also an inherited Dharma treasure. The Vermilion Emperor could use it to a very terrifying level. It was fine if it was not angry. Once it was angry, thunder rumbled. The wrath of the demon god was like a broom. It moved like a rabbit in the void. It hit the attacking forces facing the royal family masters. It was like an unparalleled sharp blade, creating a path. Swish! Swish! Su Fong and the 5 big goblins immediately stepped on the wrath of the demon god and followed the Vermilion Emperor and the Tao artifact's attack. They moved closer to the royal family masters through the path. Heavenly Emperor Incineration. The 3 Marquises did not expect Su Fong and the other big goblins to be able to kill their way out in such a desperate situation. At the same time, they were also shocked by the wrath of the demon god. Under the command of the 3 Marquises, the royal family masters used the Heavenly Emperor's divine origin scripture, the Heavenly Emperor Incineration. Tens of thousands of royal family masters, under the coordination of the surrounding square formation, suddenly blasted out tens of thousands of feet. It was like a violently shaking golden belt of stars in the galaxy. This belt of stars extended without restraint and rolled toward the wrath of the demon god. Boom, boom, boom. Tens of thousands of royal family masters fought against the wrath of the demon god. Neither side gained the upper hand and could instantly suppress the other. Immortal branding blade of astral annihilation. Just as the 2 sides were at a stalemate. Another big goblin. No, it was a demon wielding a Tao artifact. Wooling Goblin. He slashed out 1,000 feet long blade aura with both hands, hitting the terrifying power of the incinerating star belt that was resisting the wrath of the demon god. In a breath, the galaxy trembled. The immortal aura of the 2 Tao artifacts blasted the belt of stars into 2. Su Fong led the big goblin and charged forward again. Big Dipper Storm. Su Fong led the big goblin and charged toward the Xinyuan Empire step by step. Countless giants in the rear finally charged into the square formation. Among them, the green-robed King Green Feather killed in front of tens of thousands of experts. Especially after going through the Shinja Gate, his strength had long surpassed the former Old Toad deity, Sky Drill Rat Emperor, and other big goblin. He unleashed multiple gusts of wind, which galloped into the divine Origin Empire's formation like an army of thousands of men and horses. In an instant, he killed over 100 strong practitioners and sent thousands of strong practitioners flying in all directions. In the surrounding galaxy, the Lord of Five Poisons, Li Ziqing, Li Haojia, Su Jinhua, Elder He Zun, and other giants led tens of thousands of experts and were breaking the square formation step by step. In particular, they were very familiar with the Divine Emperor, Divine Origin Scripture. Once the Xinyuan Empire used any divine ability, they could take measures to deal with it. I really didn't expect that the Xinyuan Empire, which has dominated the small world for so many years, would be forced to this point today. Behind a royal family, Emperor Xinyuan saw this, and suddenly, after nodding, the three princes, who were leading tens of thousands of royal family masters to block Su Fong and the other big goblin, showed a grim smile. Rise. After the three formed a seal, behind a royal family, a huge portal rose from the barrier of the divine origin world. Tao artifact. In an instant, Su Fong, King Green Feather, Li Haojia, Elder He Zun, Su Jinhua, and other giants were attracted by the portal. Su Jinhua immediately transmitted his voice to everyone. This is the nation artifact of the divine origin world, the Astrolabe Immortal Sword. Master, be careful. The divine origin world is obviously suppressing us, but they used this Tao artifact at this time to kill us with the strongest means and end this war. Chapter 846. The Nation Artifact, Astrolabe Immortal Sword. Hearing Su Jinhua's thought, Su Fong felt goosebumps all over his body. He immediately sent a message to the other experts. The Xinyuan Empire's nation artifact, Astrolabe Immortal Sword, is extremely powerful. With the power of an entire nation and a small world, the power of this Tao artifact is unimaginable. Everyone, prepare your Dharma artifacts. Whether it was the six big goblin or the giants behind them, they all activated their Dharma artifacts. Above the primordial god world, all of a sudden, the portal turned into a cauldron made from the burning of magical power and spiritual energy. In the cauldron, there was a golden sword surrounded by starlight. The cauldron became bigger and bigger, burning more and more fiercely. It was as if the power of the sword could instantly shatter the cauldron and soar into the sky. Su Fong used the omnipotent power of the world in the river of stars to look at the cauldron and all the changes around it. What he saw with his naked eye was a cauldron rising from a portal. But what he saw was an indescribable power surging from the primordial god world into the cauldron and being absorbed by the Astrolabe Immortal Sword. Even the experts outside the primordial god world were releasing the mysterious Dharma power and true chi cultivated from the Divine Emperor's primordial god scripture. The cauldron was absorbing the power of the primordial god world and countless cultivators. It was supported by Dharma power and faith. Flying sword killing across the sky. Flying sword across the sky. Flying sword invincible. It's too powerful. The power of the Astrolabe Immortal Sword has reached the level of an immortal. In this small world, the power of the Astrolabe Immortal Sword is even stronger than the power of the immortals in the immortal realm. It was fine if he couldn't see it. The key was that Su Fong could see any signs of energy surging in the river of stars. The nation artifact, Astrolabe Immortal Sword, was absorbing endless power from the primordial god world and countless experts. The primordial god world must have spent countless years to create this Tao artifact. Whoosh, whoosh, the six big goblins immediately activated their Tao artifacts and came to Su Fong's side. The Astrolabe Immortal Sword was pushed to a height higher than everyone present. Even the Vermilion Emperor was unable to push the demon god's wrath to such a terrifying height. That was because this was a nation weapon. It was the power of billions of cultivators and the origin of a small world. No matter how strong the Vermilion Emperor and Su Fong were, they could not compare to a world and billions of cultivators. Buzz, from the starry skies of the origin god world, a sword light suddenly erupted. Everyone was first shaken by the sword chime to the point that their ears were trembling. Then, a dazzling sword radiance appeared in front of their eyes, occupying the starry sky. The nation artifact, Astrolabe Immortal Sword, flew out from the cauldron. At this moment, indescribable sword runes appeared on the cauldron. This was probably a sword cauldron. The appearance of the Astrolabe Immortal Sword shook the starry sky, as expected of a peerless national treasure. Moreover, Su Fong's eyes twitched. Immediately, he and the six big goblin activated their Dao treasures at the same time. As they intertwined, the immortal sword, which was still far away in the starry sky, suddenly crossed space and arrived. Its speed was so fast that it was unimaginable in this mini-world. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the nation artifact, Astrolabe Immortal Sword, had already killed Su Fong and the other six Dao treasures. Any one of them had heaven-defying strength. They did not expect that their combined defense would be pushed back hundreds of feet by the Astrolabe Immortal Sword. Whoosh! Fortunately, they managed to block the attack of the Immortal Sword. But in the next second, the Astrolabe Immortal Sword passed through the sky like a flash of starlight and arrived above the experts behind them. Boom! Damn it! He thought that the countless royals of the origin god world would use the Astrolabe Immortal Sword to deal with him first. He did not expect that it would attack him from behind. When he turned around, he saw the Astrolabe Immortal Sword exploding with sword waves that were tens of thousands of feet long. Layers of explosions engulfed tens of thousands of experts. This sword could probably kill thousands of experts. Any Calamity Realm powerhouse without Dao treasures or special abilities would definitely die under the power of the Astrolabe Immortal Sword. Su Fong's heart was bleeding. Although most of these people were suppressed by him, they had become his subordinates. Naturally, he felt like his heart was being pierced by needles when they died under the sword. Fortunately, he was pleasantly surprised. He quickly led the six big goblin back. It turned out that under the sword waves, there were huge 5 poisons monsters that exploded in the sky. Under the sword waves, they shattered and exploded one after another. The Lord of 5 Poisons, above the tens of thousands of experts. The Lord of 5 Poisons in a black robe, with the power of a Dao treasure, tried to hold up the sky with both hands. A large number of 5 Poisons monsters stacked together to fight against the 5 Poisons monsters that were slashing down from the Astrolabe Immortal Sword. If it were not for the Dao treasure, the Lord of 5 Poisons' strength, and the 5 Poisons' true body, most of the tens of thousands of experts around him would have died. But the Lord of 5 Poisons also seemed to be injured. The poison patterns were self-destructing. Clang, in a flash, the demon god's wrath serpent came and hit the Astrolabe Immortal Sword in time. The 2 Dao treasures shook off each other. But the Astrolabe Immortal Sword did not want to let go of the chance to kill anyone. It went to the other side, where there were many experts, and the sword marks it left behind were like a storm. Stop the sword. It has gathered the power of a nation and can be used continuously. Although the Lord of 5 Poisons was injured, it was not serious. But his true chi was greatly depleted. He coughed out a mouthful of blood. The reason why he could block this attack was because of his understanding of the primordial god world. Swish! The nation treasure Astrolabe Immortal Sword flew through the sky, leaving a trail of sword chi in the sky. It was too fast. If it was not fast, the Lord of 5 Poisons would not be in such a difficult situation. Not to mention the power of the sword itself. Even the sword chi formed by it was enough to make many experts' scalps numb and their true chi collapse. Tut! 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 The Astrolabe Immortal Sword was like a sword that came from the heavens. It was as fast as lightning, and the tens of thousands of experts below had just reacted when they were crushed by the sword chi. They were unable to breathe, and the Astrolabe Immortal Sword itself had already caused the skin of many cultivators to tear. Death! It was about to descend in the next second. The sword chi flew through the air. Hundreds of people had already died to the sword chi. Boom! In less than a breath's time, not only hundreds of people were killed, but most of the tens of thousands of people below were either injured or killed. A human figure suddenly grabbed out a sword chi chain, and with a sword strike, he was suddenly lifted up in midair and was heavily pressed down by the astrolabe immortal sword. The Tao artifact's pressure caused the sword chi chain to collapse and split it in two. The astrolabe immortal sword killed its way through the fleeing experts. Fortunately, most of them reacted and left the Tao artifact's attack range. Even so, in less than 2 breaths' time, 1,000 people were killed by the astrolabe immortal sword, and another 1,000 were heavily injured. So powerful. A green-robed figure arrived just in time. The sword chi chain was still around him. It turned out that the sword chi chain had come from this big shot, King Greenfeather. He looked at the corpses all around him, and then at the Lord of 5 Poisons, Su Fong, and the other big shots. He waved his arm and said, "This king will deal with the astrolabe immortal sword. It won't be a problem to hold it back, but you must buy time. Don't let the primordial god world use this Tao artifact again. Otherwise, we will be defeated by this Tao artifact." Peng King. The Lord of 5 Poisons was the first to stop. He understood that instead of everyone focusing on dealing with the Tao artifact, it was better to let one expert hold the Tao artifact while the others tried to break through the primordial god world. Without the support of the primordial god world's national power, there would not be such a powerful Tao artifact. Otherwise, it would not solve the problem of dealing with the Tao artifact. "Senior, I'll leave it to you." Su Fong nodded in the air. He led the 6 big goblin and the other experts. They no longer cared about the astrolabe immortal sword and turned to attack the royal family's formation. Looking at the corpses of King Greenfeather and the other experts leaving, his back looked majestic in the galaxy. Even so, he still felt somewhat lonely. Boom! At this time, the astrolabe immortal sword once again reached the center of a large number of experts and killed thousands of them, causing many to lose the ability to fight. If this continued, in less than half a day, the hundreds of thousands of experts brought by Su Fong would completely lose the power to fight against the primordial god world. Here, King Greenfeather suddenly released the peerless Tao artifact, Lord of Heaven's Soul Sword. He took out several immortal stones and inserted them into the immortal sword. Stepping on the immortal sword, King Greenfeather shuttled through the galaxy. These people underestimated the national artifact of our empire. The astrolabe immortal sword has been cultivating in our empire for thousands of years. How powerful is it? Even if an immortal came here, he could not shake the primordial god world. Only one cultivator to deal with the national artifact. Could it be that this person is stronger than an immortal? I think they are completely at their wits' end. On the royal family's side, many dukes and princes floated in the air, using the sacred Emperor Divine Origin Scripture to support the astrolabe immortal sword. Woo! In the starry sky, a huge mountain made of green Yao Qi suddenly appeared behind the astrolabe immortal sword that was constantly attacking. A mountain. No, it was a huge green pung. It had a huge body, and with a single flap of its wings, it could pass through a large number of galaxies. Pung. Legend has it that this was the peerless emperor of the ancient Yao race. It's actually true. Countless cultivators in the primordial god world were astonished. Clang! After King Greenfeather released his true body, he was able to catch up to the astrolabe immortal sword with the help of Lord of Heaven's Soul Sword. Moreover, just as the astrolabe immortal sword was about to attack and kill a large number of experts, Lord of Heaven's Soul Sword slashed at the astrolabe immortal sword, causing it to lose most of its sword chi. Chi! King Greenfeather came to the top of a large number of experts who were frightened. Thunder roared, "You don't have to worry about this Tao artifact. Follow the realm lord to the primordial god world." Hua! 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 These experts no longer hesitated. Seeing that the astrolabe immortal sword was blocked by King Greenfeather, they swarmed towards the primordial god world. Buzz! The astrolabe immortal sword's sword chi suddenly became stronger and attacked to the side. However, Lord of Heaven's Soul Sword followed behind, protecting a large number of experts. The two peerless Tao artifact immortal swords were actually facing each other. It seemed that the artifact spirits were competing, and both were extraordinary Tao artifacts. King Greenfeather suddenly said, "Astrolabe, immortal sword, you are very extraordinary, but I believe that my Lord of Heaven's Soul Sword is even more extraordinary. It is meaningless for us to fight." Astrolabe, immortal sword's voice came from the void. "I was refined by the primordial god imperial family and brought from the upper realm to the lower realm. I was planted in the primordial god world and merged with the imperial family's bloodline. They are equivalent to my master. You can follow us to the upper realm. The Xinyuan Empire will merge with you and make you a national weapon, but in reality, you will never be able to return to the upper realm. This is my fate. Artifacts are different from living beings. We are refined with countless divine abilities and seals. We do not have the 7 emotions and 6 desires of humans. We only recognize masters. Stubborn, huh? I have merged with the primordial god world. I will not betray you. But I will not let you harm the cultivators on my side. Not necessarily. I exist to serve the Jing clan." Clang! In a flash, the Astrolabe immortal sword attacked the other side. However, Lord of Heaven's Soul Sword rushed over to stop it. The two peerless Tao artifact flying sword began to clash in the air with the same speed and power. A Peng King is killing his way into the imperial family's formation. Su Fong looked behind and was filled with killing intent. The imperial family's formation was right in front of them. Chapter 847. Time, not only for himself, but also for the countless experts. Look, please move, especially for the Green Feather King. No matter how extraordinary he was, it was impossible for him to fight against a peerless Tao artifact that had the power of an entire country combined. If he didn't seize the time to break into the primordial god world, the Rock King would be in danger. Rumble. Ahead, a large number of golden-armored giants appeared in the Star River, releasing the aura of an emperor. The 3 lords led a large number of royal family members, at least 100,000 people, to gather the phalanxes behind the primordial god world to block Su Fong and the other giants. Su Fong didn't hold back, absorbing the power of the Tao artifact, fusing with the power of the giants around him, and using the Holy Emperor Divine Origin Scripture, together with the Flesh Fetus Divine Armor. Su Fong fused his various abilities. 6 fan clones. Facing countless golden-armored giants, Su Fong understood the Holy Emperor Divine Origin Scripture so well. How could he not have a countermeasure? He absorbed the power of the surroundings, mostly from the more than 20,000 big goblin in the Xianhuang 6 Paths Pagoda. 6 10,000-foot-tall giants appeared in front of him. Their bodies were pagodas, and because their bodies were divided into 6 levels, it was obvious that they used the Xianhuang 6 Paths Pagoda as the source to display a peerless divine ability. They also fused the ethereal true scripture, the limitless Tao art, the Holy Emperor Divine Origin Scripture, the illusory fire cloud, the heavenly demon disintegration seal, and many other divine abilities. It turned out that his strength and ability had reached the peak of perfection. Chi. The 6 pagodas once again used the Holy Sovereign Fist, advancing in front of Su Fong and the other giants, and punching the thousands of golden-armored giants. The two sides were once again in a huge explosion. Before Su Fong and the other authorities could recover from their shock, numerous experts from the Imperials, all of whom had 3 Tao of Calamity and wielded magical treasures that were almost on the same level as the Xianhuang 6 Taoist Pagoda, charged towards Su Fong and the others. This is what I've been waiting for. One by one, the tycoons rushed out from the left and right before Su Fong. Each of them fought against several of the imperial family's experts. Su Fong's target was not these ordinary opponents. Under the cover of the 6 big goblin, he managed to carve out a path through the ranks of the royal family experts. Familiar faces appeared in front of him. Su Fong, he said, "This king will kill you here and now. Years ago, this king was careless and allowed you to ambush him. causing him to lose his true self. The man in the center was the great Emperor Dipper, an old acquaintance of Su Fong. He controlled the emperor's qi. Around him were two marquises, as well as many marquises, generals, and hermits of the royal family. Great Emperor Dipper, Su Fong waved his hand. You're no match for me, and you're not qualified to fight with me. You've already lost. Is that so? This sovereign will personally kill you. Buzz. The great Emperor Dipper had actually used his Tao artifact, Immortal Light. Furthermore, his cultivation had surpassed 3 calamity grades, becoming an existence on par with the sect master. So what if you have a Tao artifact? Suddenly, a young man also released his emperor's qi. He brought out his Tao artifact, the Xianguang, and attacked with a holy sovereign's fist. His target was the great Emperor Dipper. Yuan filial son. The great Emperor Dipper also used his holy sovereign's fist to attack Su Jinhua. So this was an old acquaintance. The former crown prince had followed Su Fong into the primordial god world. Rumble, an even more powerful wave of demonic poison, followed behind Su Jinhua. The 9-segment Earth Dragon and the other big goblin worked together to protect Su Fong. They followed the wave of demonic poison into the midst of the royal family experts, directly bypassing the 3 marquises. Hee, old man Big Dipper, I'm no longer the crown prince of the past. I'm free now. You're my opponent. The 3 marquises hastily ordered their experts to retreat. But Su Jinhua's Tao artifact and the cooperation of the other experts made it so that most of the royal family experts could only stay where they were. One of the marquises roared, "You unfilial son, you're courting death. I'm no longer the crown prince of the past. My name is Su Jinhua, and I am Su Jinhua. Brotherly, keep these people busy." Su Jinhua was incomparably powerful as he faced a large number of royal family experts. All of a sudden, he cried out in alarm. A dozen big goblins suddenly appeared in the air. Li Haojie released his Tao artifact and followed Su Jinhua to the center of the royal family experts, suppressing over 10,000 experts. Kill. The 6 big goblins protected Su Fong, constantly opening a path. A large number of royal family experts shot out arrows, but the big goblin's demonic poison and innate abilities repelled most of their attacks. The Wooling Goblin occasionally shot out a large amount of stone to block all kinds of attacks. It also condensed into stone spikes that attacked like storm. Not a single expert was able to get within 30 meters of Su Fong. Not far away, above the primordial god world, royal qi intertwined, forming an emperor domain. A large area of the starry sky ahead was exploding. Several experts came before the primordial god emperor. Emperor, the enemy has more than 10,000 experts, and they have already broken through the formation created by the 3 marquises. Dozens of powerful experts are following Su Fong to the front defense. They will be here soon. The primordial god emperor stroked his beard. They're going all out. Emperor, according to the previous temporary plan, we allowed the enemy to charge forward while our countless formations waited on both sides. Now that they have charged into the center of the formation, we have a large number of formations around us that have blocked the Milky Way behind us. They have already fallen into the ambush that we had planned. Our troops are all around them, and there are more than 10 million of them. They only have a few 100,000 people, and they have been heavily injured by the nation weapon. Many of them have lost their ability to fight. Young people always have to pay a price. Furthermore, each of them is as arrogant as the Lord of 5 poisons, charging into the center of our formation without any fear. They want to take this emperor's head. They are dreaming, but in the end, it is nothing but a pipe dream. Behind this emperor is the primordial god world. For tens of millions of years, generations of emperors have racked their brains to create this powerful situation. Immediately order the outer formations to fire at the center according to the plan. There's no need to worry about our own people, especially those who do not have a royal bloodline. They are all recruited cultivators, as well as cultivators from the immortal primordial world. Even if they are members of the royal family, it is a great honor for them to die defending the empire. This subordinate will immediately give the order to the generals guarding the outer perimeter. After the experts bowed, they formed seals in front of the primordial god emperor. The primordial god emperor personally formed special yellow seals and added them to the seals. Many hermits in the surroundings requested, "Emperor, please retreat into the world's barrier. The enemy has already been surrounded. Our royal experts can slaughter them all. If I wasn't here, how could I attract the attention of these fanatics? The reason they've come here without regard for anything else is because they want to kill me. Once they kill the emperor, the primordial god world will become theirs. You don't have to worry about this emperor. This emperor is just one of the countless emperors of the royal family. In addition, this emperor has supreme immortals guarding this world. This emperor has nothing to worry about. This emperor also wants to let everyone see how this emperor suppresses these ignorant fools." The primordial god emperor's aura was like a sharp blade. With a wave of his hand, the throne disappeared. The yellow robe on his body suddenly turned into armor. This armor, it was actually the same as the Chilean emperor armor. It was a Tao artifact. With the Tao artifact, the primordial god emperor completely replaced the aura of this galaxy. He was truly worthy of being the realm lord, the emperor. At this moment, Su Fong was less than 100 miles away from the Xinyuan Empire under the demonic poison storm released by the Six Big Goblin. Almost at the same time, the phalanxes around the primordial god world began to quickly encircle them. The experts who had already been surrounded were now completely surrounded by the Xinyuan Empire. There's no need to stop them. Just follow the previous plan and slowly encircle them. Our empire is an impregnable fortress. Make sure they don't return. A large number of royal family experts were gathering troops to attack Su Fong and the other big goblin. The primordial god emperor waved his hand in the air and suddenly smiled. Immortal clouds condensed from his emperor chi suddenly burst out from under his feet. Immortal clouds dominated by immortal light, making him look like an immortal. No, this was the aura he released when his cultivation reached the peak, and he absorbed the resources of a great world all year round to cultivate an astonishing immortal spirit body. Primordial God Emperor. What came rolling over was Su Fong's unparalleled, majestic voice. It suddenly meandered over from the center of the battlefield. "Today, one of us will definitely fall here. Do you have the guts to fight me?" The primordial god emperor was taken aback for a moment. Then he chuckled coldly and said, "Ignorant brat, you don't have the guts to fight me. I'm not going to challenge you. I'm not going to fight you." That's exactly what I wanted. Su Fong ordered the 6 big goblins to stop advancing and instead focus on killing the experts around them. Then he headed toward the primordial god emperor on his immortal cloud. As he unleashed his illusory fire cloud, a pair of fiery wings appeared on his back, and his energy and sealing marks began to transform. Clearly, the primordial god emperor was much stronger than the world lord of immortal Grand Mist. He was on the same level as world lord Zhuotian and the 6 lords of fertility and lust. 100 kilometers. Before they knew it, the two of them were less than 5 kilometers apart. True to his word, the primordial god emperor stepped onto his immortal cloud and unleashed a fist strike. You seem to know a lot about the energy arts of the Imperial clan, but I refuse to believe that an outsider like you would be able to use them. Holy Paragon's fist. What an impressive world lord, Yang Qi said. Even in the middle of a river of stars, your divine abilities are limited. Holy Paragon's fist. It was the same move, the same attack, and the same river of fists. The 2 fist techniques slammed into each other in the middle of the river of stars. Both were filled with the energy of the emperors of the Xinyuan Empire. Pop! The shock waves were like 2 walls, and as they spread out, they unleashed a terrifying, destructive energy. Most people would have chosen to dodge and wait for the shock waves to fade away. But the primordial god emperor had a Tao item to protect himself, and was able to tear open 2 holes in the shock waves. Then, he unleashed a large-scale, star-shattering explosion to try to consume Su Fong. He was simply too strong. Su Fong unleashed the flaming cloud steps and his flaming cloud wings, pushing himself to the limit. Now that he had the power of 3 tribulation emperors, the god power of his Tao item began to explode. He also unleashed a large-scale star-shattering explosion to open up a wide gap. Clearly, Su Fong was weaker than the primordial god emperor. After a huge explosion, Emperor Xinyuan actually arrived in front of Su Fong in a tyrannical manner. Bam! The starry daylight sword turned into a sword shadow and slashed at the primordial god emperor's Tao item defense. The two experts were facing each other in the middle of the river of stars. Their eyes were filled with the aura of the other. Pop! The next second, the starry daylight sword was destroyed by the defensive aura released by the Tao item armor. Die! The primordial god emperor grabbed with his left hand, and a suction force enveloped Su Fong, pulling Su Fong towards him. The 5 fingers of his right hand rumbled and turned into an eagle's claw, grabbing at Su Fong's head. This time, it was a true world lord. World god image. The suction force from the primordial god emperor was the power of a world lord, releasing it into the river of stars and controlling it. On this point, Su Fong was confident that he was not much weaker than him. He immediately exploded, and a crack appeared in front of the primordial god emperor's claw. Su Fong took the opportunity to dodge. Chapter 848. This crack caused Su Fong to flash past Emperor Xinyuan's fingertips, narrowly avoiding shaving his head. Look, please move. Emperor Xinyuan's 5 fingers caused the starry sky to tremble. He looked at Su Fong in surprise. I didn't expect you to have the world chi of the Xinyuan Empire in your body. 1 mile away, Su Fong used fire cloud steps and flashed away. Impressive. You can sense the world chi of the primordial god world from my control of the Star River. I thought you were relying on the world chi of the human emperor world to contend against me. So you have already stolen my empire's power. What do you mean by stealing? Back then, I only used my methods to snatch the world chi from the third prince and the spirit camel immortal cauldron. Su Fong was not polite. After that, I killed the great Emperor Dipper in the Zhuotian realm and obtained his golden core. Then, I killed the third prince in the human emperor world and obtained his power. This is a free gift from you. You actually obtained my empire's power from a corpse. Emperor Xinyuan was in disbelief. He seemed to transfer his anger to the great Emperor Dipper. The third prince is just a useless Ado. I will treat it as if I don't have a son. Fortunately, he is my flesh and blood. I will definitely tear you to pieces. How can we cultivators be afraid of death? It's good to be young and frivolous. Even if cultivation is eternal, I, Su Fong, will still be proud and unyielding. If you have the ability, I will not have any resentment, even if I die in your hands. Don't be smug. The Xinyuan Empire was probably infuriated again. No, this time, it was truly infuriated. The Tao artifact armor on his body emitted a large amount of defensive aura. He took a step in the air, and the Star River within 3 miles, including Su Fong, burned with Emperor Fire. What a powerful god image. This is probably a domain that only immortals can have. However, as long as it is not a true domain or a Tao domain, what can it do to me? I have to go above the primordial god world and attract more cultivators' attention to reduce the pressure on the people behind me. He fell into the Star River again. Emperor Xinyuan's thoughts stirred, and he pressed his hands together. Monarch fire burned around him, forming a golden-armored giant formed from the heavenly sage tyrant body. At the same time, each of them grabbed out streaks of sword aura, forming a battle form attack form, and shot towards Su Fong like a huge spinning top. Su Fong stepped out with his astonishing fire cloud steps. The fire cloud steps was not the heaven-shaking divine steps of the immortal sealing sect. The heaven ruler divine steps was just a footwork technique, while the fire cloud steps was a movement technique and an offensive technique. Every step covered an astonishing distance. With Su Fong's current state, he could heavily injure a 3-step calamity overlord with a single step. The starry river domain formed by the monarch Chi was broken. Fortunately, he also had the power of the Saint Emperor Divine Origin Scripture, which countered each other, making it easier for him to break through a large number of domains. By the time the attack landed, he had already rushed out of the domain and towards the primordial god world. Phew, it seemed that he couldn't kill Su Fong with a single strike. This was within Emperor Xinyuan's expectations. He stepped on immortal clouds, condensing a 30-foot-long spear, chasing after Su Fong relentlessly. Natal magic artifact. Sensing the great change in Emperor Xinyuan's aura, he turned around and saw that the spear in his hand was also of the Xianhuang Six Paths Pagoda quality, and it was also a natal magic artifact. This was the first time he had encountered a powerhouse with such a powerful natal magic artifact. Moreover, he could see the degree of fusion between the spear and Emperor Xinyuan's aura. Although it couldn't be compared to him and the Xianhuang Six Paths Pagoda, it was still an existence that Su Fong had never seen before. What a peerless master! At this time, Su Fongda was flying towards the primordial god world. As expected, tens of thousands of royal family masters behind him moved towards the primordial god world from below. A large number of square formations around the primordial god world began to prepare to block Su Fong. Of course, Emperor Xinyuan wouldn't let him go. He was faster than Su Fong, especially in the starry river around the primordial god world. His invisible control was terrifying, and his speed was clearly faster than Su Fong. Clang, the spear stabbed forward. It wasn't silent, but like a bolt of lightning. A sword ray blocked the spear in midair, and both magic artifacts were knocked away. At the same time that Su Fong grabbed the Starry Daylight sword, Emperor Xinyuan also grabbed his spear. Moreover, the surrounding space was burning with Emperor's qi. Emperor Xinyuan quickly flew over Su Fong's head, his spear held horizontally in midair. Su Fong, I am the Emperor and also the Realm Master. My ancestors cultivated here for tens of thousands of years, fusing with the world. That is why I can use the power of the world as a foundation to more or less control this starry sky. You are not my opponent here. To be able to come here is the first step to success. Su Fong held the Starry Daylight sword tightly. So, Emperor Xinyuan looked at the starry river in front of him in surprise. I understand now. You deliberately came above the primordial god world to attract the attention of my empire's tens of thousands of powerhouses. You've achieved your goal. You've reduced the pressure on the central cultivators, and it's easier for you to kill your way into the primordial god world. As expected of an emperor, you're so young, but you have such shrewdness and foresight. I really must kill you, but I can't bear to do so. If you become a disciple of my empire, I might even give you control of the immortal primordial world in the future. I'm not the kind of person who can be satisfied just by eating a piece of fat meat. The reason I'm standing here today is not to become a peerless overlord, but to prove that I can surpass the impossible and reach the end of small world. In the future, I can also reach the end of a large world. It's not bad to have such ambition. You will die under my spear. Qi, in an instant, the Xinyuan Empire attacked from the front. Under the control of the Emperor's qi, Su Fong was already suppressed, and this spear light was like a flood dragon emerging from the sea, abnormally fierce. Clang! Clang! The Starry Daylight sword left his hand, and it was able to resist the spear's attack. It directly struck the spear, ensuring Su Fong's safety. At this moment, the two experts began to fight in close combat, but they also used their magic treasures to fight from a distance. At this moment, at the other end of the Star River battlefield, the Star River where Su Fong and the other experts came from was already surrounded by the Xinyuan Empire's army. Among them, there were 50,000 people forming a phalanx formation, and they were charging towards the depths of the Human Emperor world. Human Emperor world. Su Yaotian and a large number of experts were affected by the shock waves from the central battlefield from time to time. When they saw tens of thousands of experts charging towards them, they began to set up a large formation. It seemed that the Xinyuan Empire had already planned to take down the Human Emperor world in one fell swoop. There were no peerless experts guarding the Human Emperor world at this moment. Only the family Su clansmen and tens of thousands of people in charge of refining pills were left. Not to mention the number of people, even their cultivation was inferior to the experts of the Xinyuan Empire. and the difference was not small. Su Yaotian looked at the surrounding experts. Even if we die, we will not let the Xinyuan Empire enter the human emperor world. Venerable Gu, Lan Haicheng, Xiao Mei Supreme Venerable Demon King, Wan Mo, and other people also began to use their magic power. A familiar divine aura of a Tao artifact appeared in the void above everyone. It was the power of the divine image Jade Wall. It seemed that Su Fong was already prepared. He didn't leave behind any experts, but he left behind a method to deal with strong enemies. Master has ordered, all of you are to leave. Suddenly, in this desolate world, the only towering tree actually grew towards the sky with a terrifying sound. The heavenly gourd spirit tree was already an unbelievably huge spirit tree. Everyone leave. Su Yaotian was also very surprised. Everyone else was shocked by the heavenly gourd spirit tree's growth. They knew about the heavenly gourd spirit tree, but in their impression, it was just a spirit tree. But now, it was completely a demon tree. Outside the human emperor world, tens of thousands of people were already crossing over. They should be the feudal lords of the primordial god world, and they were surrounded by cold, armored generals. Mighty divine essence cannon was summoned. A general laughed disdainfully at the feudal lord. Lord Marquis, there are not many experts left in the human emperor world. We can completely not use the mighty divine essence cannon. We could just kill our way in and capture the cultivators alive to occupy the human emperor world. We cannot wantonly destroy the human emperor world. This way, Lord Marquis will be valued by the immortal venerable. All right, the human emperor world is already riddled with holes. This Lord Marquis ordered the general to store the mighty divine essence cannon into a treasure. Next, tens of thousands of experts, almost all of them feather transformation realm experts, charged towards the human emperor world like a huge net. World's barrier. A huge spirit tree formed a mushroom-like canopy in the middle of the world's barrier. Su Fong's consciousness was sitting cross-legged in the middle of the canopy. An illusory voice sounded beside Su Fong's consciousness. Master, you don't have to worry. Just leave this place to me. With the divine image Jade Annulus and the world's origin, I can kill any expert from the mortal world. Then make sure these experts don't return, said the avatar without the slightest expression. I won't disappoint you, Master. Countless tentacles began to grow from the canopy, forming a boundless sea of green leaves and vines. Looking up from the human emperor world, the heavenly gourd spirit tree had unexpectedly grown from the ground to the end of the world's barrier. Even the cultivators from the human emperor world were shocked. Boom! The world's barrier, which was close to 100 miles, was shattered by countless treasures and abilities. Tens of thousands of people from the Xinyuan Empire immediately charged into the human emperor world. But what they saw was not the resistance of the human emperor world, but a sea of trees. Strange, puzzled, these were the expressions of every expert. They still didn't know what these things were. They just flew into the sea of leaves. Buzzing. A ray of light from a Taoist artifact suddenly appeared from the broken world's barrier. It turned into a green glow and merged with the sea of leaves. Tens of thousands of people were enveloped in the sea of leaves. Such a change made many people uneasy, but they still forced themselves to travel through the sea of leaves, looking for the human emperor world cultivators to kill. Whoosh, 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 all of a sudden, the entire sea of leaves was like a stampede of 10,000 horses. It began to roll like the raging waves. Countless vines, similar to the seal chains, came out from the dense leaves and attacked each of the cultivators like arrows. The cultivators from the Xinyuan Empire had no time to react. Most of their defenses were shattered by the vines, and their treasures were knocked away. In less than 2 breaths, they were entangled by the vines. But some of them took out their treasures to attack the vines and cut them off. Then they began to run. But the vines grew out again after they were cut off. Above them, there was a seal formed by the Taoist artifact and the heavenly gourd spirit tree. Rustle, rustle. A large number of cultivators entangled by the vines were dragged out of the sea of leaves. In the blink of an eye, under the crown of the heavenly gourd spirit tree, The cultivators who were bound by the vines were suspended in the air like eggs laid by insects. More and more. Tens of thousands. Tens of thousands. The heavenly gourd spirit tree did not feel like a spirit tree or a demon tree. It had become a human tree. And it was not a human tree, but a demon tree. It was like a nest of insects. At first, the tree crown was still shaking, but the movement gradually disappeared. More and more human eggs were suspended in the air, reaching as many as 50,000. Moreover, the human egg struggled at first, but soon blood came out. Before the blood dripped, it was absorbed by the vines. Buzzing. Tens of thousands of treasures scattered from the tree crown to the sky. Are our eyes playing tricks on us? In the air, Su Yaotian and tens of thousands of cultivators watched the astonishing human eggs turn into a human tree. They were dumbfounded. Was this still the heavenly gourd spirit tree? Ha ha! Emperor Xinyuan, you must know what happened to the tens of thousands of cultivators you sent to attack our human emperor world. Origin God world. Su Fong, under the attack of the spear shadow, sneered at the Emperor Xinyuan. The author's words, "The heavenly gourd spirit tree is going crazy, hee." Chapter 849. Emperor Xinyuan. The veins on his temples twisted like fried dough twists, and there was a hint of anger in his loftiness. I already knew that there would be a threat in the human emperor world. Wouldn't I have prepared something? Su Fong, who was dealing with the spear shadows, was still waving his starlight sword to resist. He even mocked the supreme emperor of the primordial god world. Go for wool and come home shorn. How can a mere tree demon resist my empire's army? Emperor Xinyuan's aura exploded. He estimated that a large number of Xinyuan Empire's experts would attack the human emperor world. Screech, Su Fong once again flew towards the Star River above the primordial god world. He still needed to reduce the pressure on the experts and attract the attention of the Xinyuan Empire's experts. In the Star River behind him, there was smoke and explosions everywhere. The battlefield was circular, and the outside was filled with the Xinyuan Empire's troops. Mighty primordial god cannons gradually fired toward the center of the battlefield, accompanied by arrows. The battle was getting more and more intense. Clang! What you're doing is futile. You can't step into the primordial god world. In the Star River above the primordial god world, another large number of spear shadows rolled out, fighting with the swords in the Star River. Emperor Xinyuan released his Tao artifact, Immortal Light. Fortunately, the spear in his hand was not as strong as the Starlight Sword. If it was the Starlight Sword and a Tao artifact armor, then Su Fong would be suppressed by Emperor Xinyuan. Su Fong had fused the Starlight Sword to a very high degree, almost to the peak. Therefore, with his own strength, it was still possible to control Emperor Xinyuan's attacks. But the following attacks were even fiercer. Emperor Xinyuan released his absolute star domain, and the shackles were twice as strong as the previous Emperor Aura domain. Why was it so terrifying? Because he and Su Fong were above the primordial god world. The primordial god world was fused by Emperor Xinyuan, and he could secretly use the world energy of the primordial god world as a foundation to control the Star River above the world. Naturally, his control was more domineering than the Star River around the primordial god world. A large number of golden armored giants formed the Emperor domain. They were also holding spears, forming a domain of nearly 10 miles. Boom! Near the center of the battlefield. Suddenly, 2 flying swords crossed the galaxy and clashed in the void. The 2 flying swords slaughtered their way through the Milky Way, but there was not a single cultivator within 100 miles of the Milky Way. This was because these 2 flying swords were Tao treasures that surpassed King-grade treasures. Country artifact Astrolabe Immortal Sword. Heaven Monarch Soul Sword. This clash of swords created a destructive sword wave in the Milky Way, sweeping through the surrounding space. Even if there were 3 Calamity Realm sovereigns in this space, they would still be half dead. Any cultivator without the strength of 3 Calamity Realm sovereigns would die in the clash of Tao artifacts. A huge shadow broke through the air. Soon after, Heaven Lord Soul Sword and Astrolabe Immortal Sword were blasted away. This huge shadow was Green Feather Monarch's true body. He opened his mouth and spat out a few immortal stones into Heaven Lord's soul, sword body. The Heaven Monarch soul sword was a special magic treasure. As long as a cultivator could fuse with it and had immortal stones, they would be able to activate this Tao artifact. However, there were still high requirements for the cultivator's strength and yang soul. However, it was much stronger than other Tao artifacts. As long as there were immortal stones, the Heaven Monarch of the Soul Sword would have an endless supply of energy to activate it. This was why Green Feather Monarch dared to control Heaven Lord Soul Sword alone to fight against Astrolabe, Immortal Sword. If not for Heaven Lord Soul Sword's special characteristic, none of them would be able to fight against Astrolabe, Immortal Sword for a long time. Su Fong kid, you have to work hard. Green Feather Monarch once again controlled Heaven Lord Soul Sword to stop Astrolabe, Immortal Sword from going deeper into the center. Its huge body was not as fast as before, and there were some sword wounds on its body. You clearly didn't have to come here. In the Milky Way above the primordial God world, I can use a stronger world shackle divine power. You know very well that you will be shackled here, but you still came. I don't know if you're really stupid or just pretending to be stupid. In the Milky Way above the primordial God world, it was not like the shocking explosions and shock waves in the central Milky Way. Instead, it was a golden giant shackle domain formed by countless golden armored giants. Within the golden armored giants domain were the destructive shock waves. Two peerless magic treasures and two peerless experts clashed again and again. This internal battle was just like the battle between Green Feather Monarch and Astrolabe Immortal Sword. Countless nothingness exploded, and Su Fong was shaken away. Suddenly, Emperor God Origin appeared behind him, and his speed was obviously faster than Su Fong's. Su Fong could only use the Fire Cloud Step and Fire Cloud Wings. Starry Daylight Sword released a lot of sword power, but Emperor God Origin suddenly went to the other side and grabbed at him with 5 fingers. Boom! 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 Su Fong's surroundings exploded again, and his face turned pale. Fortunately, he was not seriously injured. The reason why Emperor God Origin is so strong is just as he said. This is above the primordial God world, so his control of the Milky Way has reached a supreme level. He clutched his chest and looked at the terrifying golden-armored giant's domain around him. He felt as if he was trapped in the primordial God world. The power of the shackles was too terrifying, and it directly suppressed his speed, divine power, and even sensing ability. If he didn't have a perfected physical body, if he didn't have the ability, he wouldn't have been able to last until now. He had taken such a risk in order to attract all the attention of the primordial God world here, reducing the pressure on the hundreds of thousands of cultivators in the center of the battlefield. Releasing his perfected physical body, he could see the benefits of taking such a risk. As expected, the entire battlefield was constantly moving toward the primordial God world, especially the million-strong army of the primordial God world. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that dark clouds covered the sky. You have fallen into my absolute world domain. Here, I'm the Supreme Emperor, the Supreme Ruler. Another large number of explosions erupted around Su Fong. Emperor God Origin's 5 fingers were constantly grabbing at him. He was displaying his divine power. Su Fong, you've been digging your own grave. Do you think you can save them? I, Su Fong, haven't cultivated as long as you. I'm not an emperor. I'm not a flying immortal. I don't have an immortal backing me. But I, Su Fong, am proud and unyielding. Today, I came here alone because I'm afraid of death. I believe that through my own efforts, I can support the heavens with one hand and change my fate. No matter how strong you are, you can't casually kill me. Su Fong's body was covered in wounds from the explosions. Ever since he had obtained the Wu-Tan domain, the Beichen zone, and the immortal primordial domain, this was the first time he had been injured to such an extent. Facing the immortal primordial domain Lord and Xian Daotan, he had the strength to fight alone. But now, Emperor God Origin's strength had reached the peak of the primordial God world's realm. It could be said that even the 6 lords of fertility couldn't reach such a height. Su Fong was fighting in his domain. He was suppressed everywhere, and his life was in danger at any time. After a moment of anger, Su Fong activated his supreme ability. His body was surrounded by the Holy Emperor God Origin Scripture's Emperor Qi. With the help of his perfected physical body, he could fuse with and absorb Emperor God Origin's divine power, as well as the power of the primordial God world below. This was the shocking harvest he had obtained from cultivating the Holy Emperor God Origin Scripture. When Emperor God Origin's hands reached out again, he found that the explosion wasn't as strong as before. Su Fong managed to dodge it in time. He frowned and said in surprise, "How is this possible? Why use my world domain? Why is it constantly dissipating? It seems to be controlled by you." Blood trickled down from Su Fong's arms as he smiled calmly. "Don't forget that I've also cultivated the Saint Emperor Divine Origin Scripture. You use the power of this skill as the foundation to cast the world shackles, allowing me to channel the same power and godly aura to fuse with your domain. What kind of ability is this?" Emperor God Origin couldn't believe it. "Can I tell you? Your question is too idiotic. Is it a Tao item? Or is it because you've absorbed the primordial God world energy to a very high level, and also because you're cultivating the Holy Emperor God Origin Scripture? If it wasn't for these reasons, you wouldn't be able to control my power." Haha, you can think of it as a Tao item. In the face of Emperor God Origin's shock and doubt, Su Fong naturally wouldn't tell him the real reason. "Don't be so smug. Even so, you're still shackled everywhere. After all, this is my domain. I can use the primordial God world energy to display the power of these shackles. But you can't use these shackles. Instead, you shackle me in this starry river. This is the difference between you and me, and also your fatal weakness." Overlord's fury. Emperor God Origin roared and activated his Tao item armor. He even threw out his spear to attack Su Fong. At the same time, he released his Tao item armor's divine power and charged at Su Fong. Golden astral flames interweaved around his body. He actually possessed such a terrifying Overlord's Qi. Under the protection of the Tao artifact and Imperial Qi flames, he spread open his arms, his fingers sharp and fierce like the claws of an eagle. As the spear clanged, he attacked Su Fong. At this moment, a sea of sharp fingerprints followed Emperor Xinyuan in close combat. It wasn't hard to imagine how terrifying the claw marks were when combined with the Tao item armor and Overlord's Qi. In addition, the spear and the Starry Daylight sword were clashing. Unable to use the Starry Daylight sword to block Emperor God Origin's attack, Su Fong could only use his Holy Sovereign's fist to resist the claw marks. But the claw marks rumbled and shattered a large area of the fist marks. The power of the Tao item and Overlord's Qi fused together made Emperor God Origin's strength clearly higher than before. Su Fong already had a hard time dealing with the Xinyuan Empire before, let alone now. Boom! In just a few breaths, the two had exchanged more than 100 blows. Su Fong's flesh fetus divine armor and heavenly sage tyrant body's defense were shattered layer by layer. On the other hand, Emperor God Origin's aura was like a rainbow, becoming more and more terrifying. Emperor God Origin's claw attacks were like two long snakes, constantly attacking. "You're not far from death. I don't believe that your true Qi won't be exhausted. Your defense will continue to condense. No matter how many defenses you have, I will shatter them one by one. You think I'll die just because you say so? Oomph." His defense was indeed shattered again and again under the impact of the claw attacks. His physical body was also affected because the other party had a Tao item armor. If he didn't have it, his defense wouldn't have been shattered. But Emperor God Origin didn't know how powerful he was. His true Qi was abundant, and even the big goblin couldn't compare. Most importantly, he could also absorb the Overlord Qi around him, as well as the void power in the stars. The stalemate continued. Su Fong didn't know how many times he used his Holy Sovereign's fist. Emperor God Origin didn't know how many times he clawed. The two were like madmen, like beasts, fiercely snatching each other's food. The battle had reached such a primitive stage. One could imagine that life and death were beckoning to the two at any time. At this point, even Emperor God Origin didn't expect Su Fang's combat strength to exceed his expectations. Overall, Su Fang was still at a disadvantage. Once he didn't condense his defense in time, his physical body would be destroyed by the claw marks. Divine Essence, Sword Essence. His physical defense was shattered once again. Emperor God Origin saw this opportunity and suddenly shot out a supreme sword chi full of Dao items. It pierced through the claw attacks and forcibly penetrated Su Fang's broken defense. Chapter 850. The dignified Emperor Xinyuan's attack was like a falcon swooping down on a rabbit, fast and accurate. Please move aside. Crack poo. His defenses had already been shattered, and before his new defenses could be strengthened, the immortal light sword chi of this Dao treasure pierced through all his defenses. A portion of the sword chi's power pierced into Su Fang's chest. His entire body was sent flying by the whirlpool formed by the claw. At this moment, Emperor Xinyuan's monarch aura was intertwined with a Dao artifact's monarch aura. He ignored everything. I said your death is near, but you didn't believe me. The next second, Su Fang barely managed to stop himself in midair. Blood continued to flow. I've fought with several world lords. Even the grand immortal world lord is far from being as strong as you. He trembled as he finished speaking. He looked at his chest. There was a finger-deep, fist-size hole. It should have been a sword wound, but because the sword energy had exploded when it pierced his body, it had blown such a large hole in his chest. Blood flowed out. What kind of body is this? You can still hold on. You should only have half a life left. No, you should be dead. Emperor Shun Yuan stepped forward. He controlled the golden-armored giant domain and looked at Su Fang in shock. I rarely meet an opponent who can force me into a corner. Emperor Shun Yuan, you are Su Fang's last strong opponent after entering the great world. You are a mountain. I will surpass you. You are the overlord of a small world. I will replace you. Only by surpassing you can I be considered a mortal cultivator standing at the peak of small world. With this ambition, I, Su Fang, will definitely become an extraordinary immortal in the future. His words were like the roar of a tiger. Su Fang didn't look like a seriously injured cultivator. Instead, he was full of spirit and incomparably hale and hardy. Emperor Shun Yuan laughed. Replace me, surpass me. Boy, your strength is extraordinary. I also admit that, if it weren't for the power of the world, I wouldn't be able to suppress you. But my Xinyuan Empire has cultivated for countless years, and we also have the power of immortals secretly supporting us. This is something you can't have. So, you're destined to lie here today. Power, I want power. Then, he looked at Emperor Xinyuan. His body trembled as he prepared to unleash another astonishing attack. The Su Fang silently settled down and communicated with the small heaven and earth immortal pot. It didn't have much immortal spiritual energy left, and if it used a large amount, it would be difficult to recover once it was used up. It still needed to be saved for when it went to the great world. What methods did he use to contend against Emperor Xinyuan? This was Su Fang's only thought at this moment, his only thought. He couldn't help but look behind him. For the sake of everyone, Green Feather King took a huge risk alone to fight against the Astrolabe Immortal Sword. The longer the battle dragged on, even if he was the Rock King, his life would be in danger. Back then, at the Xinjia Gate, he had already risked his life to save him. Su Fang didn't want anything to happen to the Rock King. Looking at the other experts, they were also surrounded by countless experts from the Xinyuan Empire and Immortal Primordial Domain. If he didn't defeat Emperor Xinyuan here, his losses would only get worse. There was only one choice, and that was to defeat Emperor Xinyuan regardless of the consequences. Not only for others, but also for himself. Only by defeating such an expert would he be able to truly roam the small world. Emperor Xinyuan was the final peak he wanted to challenge in this small world. Master, he's coming. The starry daylight sword and the long spear finished their battle and returned to Su Fang's surroundings. They flew slowly, constantly on guard against Emperor Xinyuan. Magic treasures had spirituality. When they learned that their master was injured, their physical body would need time to recover. There's no other choice. Even if I fall into the demonic path, I won't hesitate. People live to prove themselves. Since I'm alive, I have to prove that I'm not inferior to others. I have to fight for this honor. With a thought, the flaming cloud's spirit gourd, Rakshasa jade bottle, and other magic treasures in his body immediately strengthened his physical body. At the same time, he pushed the Xianhuang Six Paths Pagoda to the extreme. Emperor Xinyuan fused with the long spear. When he saw Su Fang's magic treasure aura, he wasn't moved. Another life treasure. If your cultivation reaches the flying immortal realm, if you're not in the shackles of this place, you'll be at a disadvantage. You won't be my match. I only have one thought now, and that is to surpass you and defeat you. For this, I can disregard all consequences. Let's see what you're capable of. Nightmare Blood Transformation. After being strengthened by his life treasure and other magic treasures, Su Fang was in his strongest state. However, he still hadn't activated the power of 20,000 Big Goblin. But a shocking amount of demonic chi and netherworld chi surged out. Then, blood spots and bloodlines began to appear on his skin. You dual cultivate the demonic path. Emperor Xinyuan's expression changed. Someone like you will fall into the demonic path sooner or later and become a demon. This is my choice. If I can become strong enough to deal with strong enemies, I will use it. Su Fang slowly released his demonic chi and looked down on the domain. Suddenly, 2 streaks of blood burst out from his shoulders. Sizzle. 2 bloody horns grew out of his shoulders, dripping with blood like the horns of a true demon. Nightmare Blood Transformation. Emperor Xinyuan trembled slightly. So, it's the Nightmare Blood Transformation. I don't believe that a mortal realm cultivator like you can control the Nightmare Blood Transformation. Either you die, or I live. The bloody horns finally grew out. At this moment, Su Fang's demonic chi and genuine chi were mixed together, mainly with the evil netherworld chi. He felt that he had gained an indestructible body. Together with the 6 layers of energy released by his life treasure, Su Fang was in a state of Nightmare Blood Transformation. This was the first time he had used the Nightmare Blood Transformation without restraint. With your inhuman and ghostly appearance, you want to become an immortal and attain the Tao? Dream on. Your head is mine. Innate divine might. Emperor Xinyuan had reached the peak of his strength as well. The spear had fused with him, and his body was filled with a fierce aura of interweaving spear shadows. In addition to the Emperor's aura and the Emperor's domain that he controlled, the Emperor Xinyuan Emperor was an invincible existence. Whoosh whoosh, here he came. The divine origin empire, who had entered his natal state, had the aura of an emperor as well as divine might. His hands had turned into sharp spear tips, and his head had an indescribable sharpness. Spear shadows filled his entire body. He also had a doctrine artifact armor. It was not too much to say that he had a sharp edge. I want your life. Of course, it seemed that Su Fang, who was in the Nightmare Blood Transformation, wasn't a match for the Origin God Emperor. But there was one thing that Su Fang didn't know. Once the Origin God Emperor truly stimulated the Nightmare Blood Transformation and fused it with his life magic tool, just how terrifyingly strong would he be? Whoosh! Su Fang trembled, and the Imperial territory trembled. He joined the fight. Bang! The 2 peerless experts exchanged punches in the air and clashed in the Emperor domain. Tut tut tut. The impact cut the Imperial territory in the middle and then exploded. Many black holes and cracks appeared in the galaxy. It was as if the 2 were going to be sucked into the black hole and banished forever. Emperor Xinyuan was shocked. You can really control the Nightmare Blood Transformation. Between their fists, both of them could clearly feel how terrifying the other's divine power was. What do you think? I will use the fist of the Sacred Master to defeat you. A burst of netherworld chi rushed out from Su Fang's arms, interweaving into a supreme demonic chi. He punched out again, this time with astonishing demonic runes. Emperor Xinyuan did not want to be left behind. He also used the fist of his sacred master. Bang! Another confrontation ensued. Following that, the two of them launched an offensive with their arms. Like a pile driver, they fought with loud booms. The galaxy above them was completely swept away by the destructive astral storm. It even affected the origin god world and the battlefield. Crack! This kind of peak impact caused Su Fong and Emperor Xinyuan's defenses to shatter at the same time. In addition to their attacks, it was like the two of them were tearing each other's bodies apart. Bang! One punch hit Su Fong's shattered defenses. The Emperor Xinyuan's fist penetrated the defense and hit Su Fong's chest. Then, Su Fong saw the moment his opponent's defenses shattered and punched the Emperor Xinyuan's body. But it hit the Dao artifact armor. Even so, the Emperor Xinyuan's body trembled. He could not believe the divine power in Su Fong's fist. Was he even human? Bang! In less than a breath's time, the two of them were once again punching each other. The close combat had reached such a tragic point. Although the Emperor Xinyuan had a Dao artifact armor, he was still coughing out mouthfuls of air and blood. However, Su Fong's chest was punched again and again. He was also coughing up blood again and again. Crazy, crazy. One was a bull, the other was a lion. His eyes were filled with killing intent. There was not the slightest trace of fear. The Emperor Xinyuan took another punch from Su Fong. He coughed up a mouthful of blood. Then he punched Su Fong. The hole in Su Fong's chest had already healed. He shook his head. Are you a human or a devil? Are you a human or a monster? I'm wearing a Dao artifact armor, but it can't compare to your physical body. I am Su Fong, the future realm master of the origin god world. I am no one but myself. Emperor Xinyuan, don't even think about stopping. I will stop. I have a Dao artifact. Pow! Pow! The two experts coughed up blood. Their bodies trembled violently, but they still punched each other. The battle was so intense that it was like they had returned to the most primitive era. They were using the most primitive method to decide the victor. Below the origin god world, 1,000,000 cultivators were protecting it. They were also waiting for the Emperor Xinyuan's orders. They had personally witnessed the battle between the two. Their bodies and minds were torn apart. Their primordial spirits were trembling. Their Dao hearts were about to shatter under this pressure. Over 1,000 times. Over 10,000 times. Still, the Emperor Xinyuan and Su Fong did not count how many punches they had taken. They had exhausted everything. Clenching their teeth, they could only persevere. Xinyuan Emperor, the only victor is me, Su Fong. If you wanted to suppress me in close combat, you wouldn't have been able to use your world strength. Joining forces with other experts to deal with me would have been the best plan. But you chose the worst plan because my advantage is my physical body. Blood transformation power. Both sides' auras had disappeared. It was impossible to tell who would win in the end. At this moment, the bloody horns on Su Fong's shoulders grew once more. His body was tightly bound by a bloody seal that drilled into his body. Boom! That was because he was using all his strength to stimulate the demon blood transformation. He wanted his body to be in its most powerful state. He did not care about the danger of falling into the demonic path. He gathered all his strength in his fist and punched at the incoming Emperor Xinyuan's fist. Bang! Boom! The two fists collided. But this time, they were not at the same height. Instead, Su Fong's right fist was covered in bloody seals. Combined with some black lotus blood runes, Su Fong's fist erupted with the peak of his will ignition. The punch broke Emperor Xinyuan's right arm, and the remaining force of the punch sent Emperor Xinyuan flying several miles away. Chapter 851. Whoosh! Under Su Fong's punch, the power of the Origin God Emperor was sent flying back into the Origin God world's celestial river. Please move. Look at Su Fong again. The bloodhorn on his body was nearly 1 meter long, and his whole body was covered in blood marks, as well as the black lotus mark that only the black lotus true body had. Together with the devil marks, it was as if the nightmare blood transformation had formed some kind of peerless power with the black lotus true body. This was a strange and new body. Back then, when the nightmare blood transformation exploded, Su Fong was a devil who had fallen into the devil race. At this time, although he had devil chi, the devil marks on his body were mostly blood marks and blood lotus marks. His skin was covered in a thick layer. Thank goodness. This also proves that a person's potential is indeed unlimited. The nightmare blood transformation is already half a step into the demonic Tao. When a cultivator encounters such a thing, let alone controlling the nightmare blood transformation, even suppressing it and maintaining a clear mind is difficult. Once the nightmare blood transformation erupts, there is a chance that they will completely fall into the demonic Tao. Before this, I was also afraid of stepping into the devil path and becoming a devil. I feared light and lived in darkness. But now, as long as my mind is clear and I have no distracting thoughts, then I can activate the nightmare blood transformation with all my strength. The most important thing is that the nightmare blood transformation and the Black Lotus true body have cleverly fused together. Although I'm currently in the nightmare blood transformation state, this is definitely not the nightmare blood transformation, but a brand new power stimulated by the nightmare blood transformation in my physical body. In terms of strength, speed, and divine might, the punch sent Emperor Xinyuan flying. Many cultivators stared blankly at this scene. More importantly, even Su Fong himself found it hard to believe. He had no absolute confidence that after using the nightmare blood transformation, he could truly surpass Emperor Xinyuan. After all, the nightmare blood transformation was a dangerous devil transformation state. Back when he killed the third crown prince, he had used the nightmare blood transformation to unleash extraordinary power. In recent years, he had been trying to figure out whether or not righteous Tao cultivators could grasp the nightmare blood transformation. This was a risk. It was also his only choice. It proved that his choice was correct. At this moment, his potential was stimulated. Moreover, he was now in the nightmare blood transformation state. It was no longer the nightmare blood transformation, but a brand new power. Xinyuan Emperor, hand over your life. Looking down on the starry sky, his aura shook the universe. Before he could figure out just what kind of strength he possessed, his thoughts suddenly became incomparably clear. He burned with the desire to kill the Origin God Emperor and lead the powerhouses to carve out a new tomorrow. Thunder roared like a tiger. In the form of the nightmarish blood transformation, he looked like a devil from the darkness, burning with darkness and evil as he shot toward Emperor Xinyuan. Above and below, inside and outside the primordial god world, everyone was shaken by Su Fong's battle cry that shook the starry skies. Protect the Emperor. He thought that this was the best opportunity to kill Emperor Xinyuan. But he was wrong. The world was never fair. This was not a competition. A large number of Origin God World's masters panicked and rushed into the shattered Overlord Domain Star River to stop Su Fong. Boom! Boom! At the very beginning, there were 10 or so peerless hermits of the royal family, with 3 Calamity Daos. They all released the divine Emperor Divine Origin Scripture, and their auras were terrifying. They all had the strength of Sorcerer Heiyun. So what? As soon as they attacked, they were directly smashed by Su Fong's pair of bloody horns. The bloody horns directly tore the hermits of the royal family into pieces. The other hermits also rushed over, but no one could stop Su Fong, who had reached another height and whose body was as strong as a Tao artifact. This emperor will not fall like this. A powerhouse awakened. No, he was only temporarily moving with the wind in the starry sky. More than a dozen experts came to the front of the blood-covered Emperor Xinyuan, who still had a Tao artifact. They saw that Su Fong was already 1 mile away. Emperor Xinyuan suddenly burned his overlord aura. It was still domineering, and the power of the world he released was still as strong as before. But his body was seriously injured by Su Fong, especially his entire right arm. It was almost impossible to raise it. The bones should have been shattered. Suddenly, he turned around and grabbed his spear, wanting to rush up and fight Su Fong again. However, he suddenly stopped. First, he looked at Su Fong, who was only 100 meters away, and then he glanced at the Origin God World. Su Fong's 5 fingers clawed out 10 terrifying bloody claws. I want your life. Hum. But before he could reach Emperor Xinyuan, the Central Star River suddenly distorted, and a figure shuttled through the void and waved his arm at Su Fong. Deity, Su Fong's eyes were so bright that he couldn't see anything clearly. Boom! The 10 bloody claws were shattered, and the immortal light also sent Su Fong flying. A mortal dares to kill this emperor's descendant? You're done for. The figure emitted a dazzling immortal light. With a shake, he quickly condensed a palm and slammed it at Su Fong, who had lost his balance. This move would definitely threaten Su Fong's life. 5 poisons killing array, divine arm, sacred fist. In less than 10 meters, the immortal's palm was about to swallow Su Fong. At this critical moment, 2 figures appeared from Su Fong's left and right at the same time. A black-robed man released an endless amount of poisonous vital qi, combined with the immortal light of a Tao artifact. An expert with a demonic aura activated the Tao artifact with both arms and punched out with boundless divine power. Clap! Clap! Faster than the immortal, the 2 experts arrived in front of the immortal's giant palm at the same time. Behind the giant palm of celestial radiance, that illusory figure laughed imposingly. 5 poison sect master, I really did meet you. You are my senior, a peerless giant who laughed proudly at the world over 100,000 years ago. Boom! Boom! As the sound came, the 2 experts who had rushed out in time were also knocked over by the immortal's palm. Fortunately, they didn't fly far and floated in the air. It was the Lord of 5 Poisons and the Tongtian monster Venerable. In time, they lifted Su Fong, who was still in the air, from behind. Su Fong was dispirited, but he still forced himself to stand straight. Su Fong looked at the Lord of 5 Poisons and the Tongtian monster Venerable with concern. Are the 2 of you okay? The Tongtian monster Venerable shook his head. The Lord of 5 Poisons looked at the immortal who was coming. He's even more powerful than Xian Daotian. This person is Jing Suifeng, someone who ascended 50,000 years ago. Lord of 5 Poisons. A middle-aged man in the immortal light pressed down. This was a holy man in a white robe with golden embroidery. Immortal light was naturally released from his eyes and head, as if he had brought beautiful scenery. It was another immortal from the primordial god world, a peerless immortal who ascended 50,000 years ago, Jing Suifeng. Jing Suifeng only looked at the Lord of 5 Poisons. Before I descended, I thought that you might have been killed by the descendants of the royal family or Doichi. I probably couldn't pass on my words to you. Fortunately, you're alive, so I can pass it on to you. The sect master and the Tongtian monster Venerable protected Su Fong. Why did my sect fall more than 100,000 years ago, but you were born tens of thousands of years later? You're my junior. Do you have anything to say to me? Of course, I have nothing to say to you. But have you forgotten the moment you ascended and transcended the tribulation? Before you died, you encountered that power and will. You're saying that it's him. That's it. It seems like you won't be able to forget my family's ancestor for the rest of your life. When he was in the lower realm, he told me to tell you if I met you. More than 100,000 years ago, he was able to kill you with a single strand of energy, preventing you from transcending the tribulation and ascending. Now, he can also trample you under his feet. Jing Yuan. Hearing Jing Suifeng's words, the Lord of 5 Poisons clenched his fists. His joints seemed to be wriggling. The Lord of 5 Poisons sneered angrily. You'd better release a will to Jing Yuan immediately. Otherwise, you'll also die here. As for Jing Yuan, tell him that after I, the Lord of 5 Poisons, ascend, I'll definitely go to the great world and take his head. After so many years, you're indeed as arrogant as the rumors say. But now you're going to die in my hands. Jing Suifeng's aura suddenly exploded. He stepped forward step by step, causing black holes to appear in the starry sky. I'll protect Master. The Tongtian monster Venerable protected Su Fong. Just as the Lord of 5 Poisons was about to attack, Su Fong grabbed him. Jing Suifeng flew over arrogantly. The 3 of you can go to hell. Don't you dare hurt my younger brother. A spiritual light, like starlight in the darkness, suddenly appeared in front of the three of them. A chaotic force was released in the surrounding starry sky. Sizzle. Jing Suifeng's immortal aura rushed over with him. When it came into contact with this dark aura, it was obviously corroded by the dark aura. Although the corrosion was not very shocking, it was still unbelievable. His power was from the great world, but what about his opponent? How could the power of a mortal world's cultivator make the power of a great world tremble? Bai Ling controlled the mysterious power of the mysterious heavenly monarch of chaos to resist the immortal's aura. I'm the Chaos Fairy. How can I let you hurt my younger brother? Chaos Fairy? Immortal? I've never heard of your name. Jing Suifeng was really shocked, and he hesitated slightly. Su Fangdao was happy. Sister Bai, you've come at the right time. Only you can stop Jing Suifeng. Suddenly, an empty voice came from behind Jing Suifeng. Brother Feng, the small world naturally has extraordinary power. This little demon probably obtained the inheritance of some peerless immortal emperor, which is why she has such incredible power. Kill her, and this mysterious power will become our treasure. Jing Suifeng tilted his body and nodded. Immortal Master, you've come at the right time. It's time to end this joke. Capture Su Feng and this little demon, and then return to the immortal AO Great World. Another immortal, other than Bai Ling, Su Feng, Demon Venerable Tong Tian, and the Lord of Five Poisons were slightly shocked. A cloud of immortal clouds rolled over from Jing Suifeng's side. It was a 30-year-old immortal in a green robe. His black and green robe fluttered in the air, giving people the feeling that this person was bottomless. Not to mention Immortal Master, I can also kill you. With the appearance of Immortal Master Lung Xin, the situation changed again. Jing Suifeng was very proud. Crane Fairy Bai Ling put her hands on her hips. Two immortals, do you think I'm afraid of you? I'm the true disciple of the Heavenly Monarch of Chaos. Heavenly Monarch of Chaos. Immortal Master Lung Xin understood. Immortal Master, I seem to have some impression of the Heavenly Monarch of Chaos, but I can't say exactly. I guess I've heard of him when I was cultivating in the lower realm. What Heavenly Monarch of Chaos? Everything will turn to dust in front of me. Yes, yes. Jing Suifeng's eyes were not only proud, but also twisted ferociously. The Lord of Five Poisons, Su Feng, and you, little crane, must stay here today. Those who should die must die, and those who should be suppressed must be suppressed. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Bai Ling said fearlessly. Everyone, it's time to deal with the immortals with all your strength. Kill the immortals, and this war will be over. Su Feng suddenly sent a thought to the back. Master, whoosh. The big goblin rushed over first, followed by Li Haojia, Su Jinhua, and other experts. Chapter 852. The experts that came were all existences with Dao artifacts, except for the green feather monarch. The human giants with Dao artifacts were on one side. The Lord of Five Poisons, Li Ziqing, Su Jinhua, Qin Yuanho, Sacred Monarch Guangzhou, Li Haojia, and Elder Heizun. The big goblin with Dao artifacts were the sky-reaching monster Venerable, Zhu Huang, 9 segments Earth Dragon, Wooling Goblin, 9-headed Monster King, and Monster King Brute Force on the right side of Su Feng. Together with Su Feng and Bai Ling, there were a total of 13 peerless giants with Dao artifacts. They were like a long snake in a line, and their aura was heaven-defying. Jing Suifeng glanced at them one by one and looked at Immortal Master Lung Xin with surprise. This is why the North Emperor and Xin Daotian died in your hands. With so many people with Dao artifacts, any immortal who comes down here can't deal with so many Dao artifacts. A bunch of chickens and dogs, just ants of the mortal world. Immortal Master Lung Xin ignored everyone and only had Su Feng in his eyes. Kid, you should know why I came down here, right? It's because of you. It's because my memory isn't good. Su Feng, who was under the protection of the experts, was no longer in the nightmare blood transformation state and was secretly devouring all kinds of resources. Facing Immortal Master Lung Xion's aggressive tone, he just casually replied, "You're still playing dumb? Don't you know the time? It was Jing Suifeng's turn to roar. Hand over the human emperor's inheritance, and we'll spare your life. The human emperor's inheritance? Sorry, it's already fused with me. I'm afraid I can't give it to you. Ever since you came to the primordial god world, I've been secretly watching your every move. You've already used the ethereal true enlightenment's peerless divine ability. In this world, a cultivator who hasn't reached the flying immortal realm can freely control the universe. It can only be the ethereal true enlightenment. Brat, you think you can fool us by feigning ignorance? Even if you don't tell us the truth, we'll still suppress you and obtain the ethereal quintessence through a soul search. Let me give you a piece of advice. It is impossible for an ant like you to possess the ethereal quintessence. This is a treasure that the power behind me must obtain. Even if I, immortal master Lung Xin, am unable to obtain it from you, there are still other immortals who will come looking for you. You can't possibly be hiding in a minor world, right? You'll have to go to a major world. That's right. As long as you possess the ethereal true insight, you will forever be a rat crossing the street. We came from the lower realm under orders. We have a supreme power behind us. That is an existence that you all can never imagine. Smart people do smart things. Hand over the ethereal true insight, and you will still be able to grasp it. We will also not forcefully extract it from your Yuan spirit. In fact, if you are willing to hand it over, we will give it to you if you want a Dao artifact, immortal tier cultivation technique, or any other treasure. Jing Suifeng and immortal master Lung Xin were putting on a two-man show in front of more than 10 experts. If one's Dao heart wasn't firm enough, they would really be bewitched or influenced. Even the Lord of Five Poisons, Li Ziqing, Su Jinhua, Li Haojia, and the Big Goblin were sizing up Su Feng. In the face of their different gazes, Su Feng resolutely refused. The ethereal true insight originally came from a major world. You can comprehend it yourselves. Senior Human Emperor didn't grasp its secrets, and the ability I used to control the River of Stars also didn't come from the ethereal true insight. That's why I don't understand why you came to the lower realm. What a waste of energy. Immortal Master Lung Xion's cold-killing intent returned. Jing Suifeng pointed. Su Feng, I advise you not to act recklessly. Huh? Su Feng suddenly laughed. Do you think my Su Feng is some human emperor's inheritance? It is Senior Human Emperor's life's work. As his inheritance, I have to protect it. I have to protect it forever. If I give it to you, wouldn't I have no heart? If you want it, it'll depend on your strength. I hope you can still speak so boldly after being suppressed by me. Jing Suifeng instantly released a deity aura in the Xianguan. Undying Turtle, it's time. The overlords and the big goblin flashed, and surrounded by Ling one by one. Su Feng roared towards the sky. I'm here. Don't worry. I'm not the undying turtle, but the undying heavenly lord. Why don't you remember the undying heavenly lord? A young man in a black robe slowly landed. It was the undying turtle that had been hiding in the depths of the River of Stars with Bai Ling, another big goblin. Immortal Master Lung Xin was very surprised. Jing Suifeng's expression changed slightly. Is the undying turtle the heavenly horned giant striped turtle that has lived for nearly 1,000,000 years in the immortal melody world? It's good that the Xinyuan Empire remembers me. The undying turtle landed in front of everyone. Su Feng's injuries had completely recovered, but he still looked a bit weak. Jing Suifeng, immortal master Lung Xin, the four of you came to the lower world before, but I killed you one by one. Do you think it's possible for the two of you to kill me now? If we weren't prepared, we wouldn't have the confidence to deal with a dozen cultivators from the lower world who had fused with their Dao artifacts. But do you think we deities don't have other methods to survive in the great world? Jing Suifeng suddenly opened a passage of deity aura. Whoosh! A giant eagle appeared out of thin air. Demon Immortal's immortal master Lung Xin also pointed. Ben Chihu, Ben Lehu, Master, two strong men with demon patterns on their bodies and tiger robes appeared. They were also demon immortals, but in human form. Puppets. The two deities released a beam of deity aura at the same time. Whoosh! Whoosh! Another 4 figures appeared. They were numb deities without any consciousness. They were the overlords that had been killed by the 2 deities. They had been refined into puppets by the deities. This, Su Fong looked at the 3 demon immortals and 4 puppets in shock. The other overlords and the big goblin were also shocked. Adding them all together, the enemy had 7 helpers. Plus the 2 deities, there were 9 overlords from the great world. Looks like we're going to spill our blood in this galaxy today. The 5 Venom sect leader held his breath. He was in a state of shock. He could also sense the emotions of the experts around him. However, he did not back down and shouted, "Everyone, if you want to become immortals, and if you want to go to the great world and become powerful immortals, this is the final hurdle that we must cross. Moreover, we are all extraordinary and have our own methods. In the end, we will be the victors." Su Jinhua bowed. "We've lived for more than 10,000 years. Since we're following Master, we have to overcome this obstacle and follow Master to death." Su Fong could feel the Overlord's wills very strongly. He pointed at the enemy. "Thank you for your trust. I'll have to trouble Sister Bai and the Heavenly Venerate to deal with the 2 deities. Everyone else, work together to deal with the 3 demon immortals and the 4 puppets." Immortal Master Lung Xin also released a shocking deity aura. His green robes fluttered in the wind, and waves of cold air began to freeze. Mantis trying to stop a chariot. "Kill!" Deity voices exploded. The 3 demon immortals and the 4 puppets leaped up, causing the space to distort. "Let's go!" Bai Ling and the undying tortoise also charged out with the overlords at almost the same time. Their goal was to stop Immortal Master Lung Xin and Jing Suifeng. Primordial God World. In the next moment, in the starry sky, the overlords released the power of Dao artifacts and fought with the enemy puppets and the big goblin. The big goblin against the demon immortals and the overlords against the puppets. Su Fong was shaken by the shock waves of the explosion. At this time, even a strand of the power could kill any Ascension Realm cultivator. Boom! Especially further ahead, Bai Ling and Jing Suifeng were fighting, while Immortal Master Lung Xin and the Undying Tortoise were fighting, causing the Milky Way to be full of shockwaves that could kill overlords of the flying celestial realm. Su Fong activated the power of the world. In just half an hour, he swallowed most of the resources, allowing him to recover more or less. The real reason why he recovered so quickly was actually the Black Lotus True body and the perfect physical body. Without these, he wouldn't have such amazing recovery ability in a short time. Chi. Some overlords were entangled with the immortals. Su Fong didn't hesitate. He believed in them. With the speed of the Door of Wonder, he passed through the central shock wave Milky Way. In front of him was the square formation of Emperor Xinyuan, protected by tens of thousands of Imperial clan experts. He shouted in the sky, ignoring the tens of thousands of people blocking him. He shouted disdainfully, "Emperor Xinyuan, you and I are both injured. Shouldn't we continue to fight? You're an emperor. Don't you have any ambition?" Suddenly, Emperor Xinyuan waved his hand. Under the protection of tens of thousands of people, he and a group of peerless experts flew toward the primordial God world's barrier. He even sneered, "Humph, how could I be instigated by you? I've cultivated for tens of thousands of years. I could have ascended long ago, but I've always stayed here. Do you know why? You really slipped away." Su Fong chased after him. "It's not that I don't have a competitive heart. It's not that I don't want to become a peerless immortal. It's just that from the day I became the Emperor and the Realm Lord, my cultivation path was no longer about personal strength. It was about protecting the primordial God world. Therefore, why should I fight with you to the end? You're just an ignorant kid. You'll never understand what true responsibility is." At this moment, Emperor Xinyuan had already flown into the world's barrier. Moreover, a magical altar rose up there, a 100-mile-long magical altar. Emperor Xinyuan seemed to be forming hand seals. An astonishing throne rose from the altar, and the altar's aura perfectly fused with the world's barrier. It seemed to be some kind of huge offensive existence. "Don't even think about stopping me," he passed by tens of thousands of imperial family experts. The former was either releasing large arrays, arrows, or magic treasures. As for Su Fong, he activated the nightmare demon blood transformation, and a bloody horn grew out. As he rushed forward, he released a heaven-defying demonic aura. Boom, boom, boom. He waved the starlight sword. Any magic treasure that encountered it was sent flying. As for the other divine abilities, large arrays, and arrows, he directly used the momentum of the nightmare demon blood transformation to crush them. Tens of thousands of flying immortals of the imperial family couldn't stop a cultivator who had cultivated for hundreds of years. I didn't expect a stalemate to reach such a degree. The world's barrier. On the throne and the altar, Emperor Xinyuan kept adding seals. A large number of imperial family experts were silent. They were actually afraid of this young man who didn't fear death. Emperor Xinyuan fiercely released a thought, causing all the experts to come back to their senses. Especially below, tens of thousands of cultivators appeared between the primordial god world and the world's barrier. They all had a shocking world aura. This was the true strength of the Xinyuan Empire. Wind and clouds rise, the world as a furnace. As the emperor and the world master, a large number of sealing chains poured out from Emperor Xinyuan's body. They first fused with the altar, then fused with the world's barrier. His aura had no temperature. It was as cold as the galaxy. My Xinyuan Empire has been established for tens of thousands of years. We have never truly used the power of a world or a nation. This emperor will rely on the power of a world to end this war and eliminate the strong enemies. Emperor Xinyuan opened his hands. At this moment, all the chains burned with the world's essence. Together with the emperor's aura, the altar became a golden existence. The power of a nation, the power of a world. Seeing this, Su Fong knew that a bloody battle was coming. Author's words, the end of the month will explode. Chapter 853. Tens of thousands of royal experts couldn't stop Su Fong. Any magic treasure, divine ability, or formation attack disappeared like stones in front of Su Fong. Emperor Xinyuan, 3 miles to go. This distance was only 10 feet in the eyes of mortals. If it weren't for a large number of experts blocking, Su Fong could reach the spell altar in less than 3 breaths. Nation weapon, return. On the spell altar. In the dazzling world power, Emperor Xinyuan's hand seals were constantly changing, like flowers blooming in brocade. Whoosh! In just 1 breath, the battlefield's shockwave was like a river of stars. A sword chi came from the sky, splitting the shockwave from the experts' fight in the sky and flying toward the primordial god world at an indescribable speed. Not good. The nation weapon Astrolabe Immortal Sword is similar to Su Jinhua's strength when activated by one person. But when activated by a world, even 10 Su Jinhuas would find it difficult to resist. Just 1 mile away, it was about to reach the spell altar. Su Fong glanced at it and saw vertical lines appear on his arms. The nation weapon Astrolabe Immortal Sword was crazily attacking. What about Green Feather King? Was he seriously injured? At this moment, with another show sound, the vast sky and the moon arrived. It was actually the country weapon Stellar Plate Immortal Sword slaughtering its way to the back, roughly several li of the starry river. In the next breath, it would reach the sky where Su Fong was. Clang! This time, he had to deal with the Astrolabe Immortal Sword, but he raised his eyebrows in surprise. Behind him, a sword light suddenly intercepted the nation weapon Astrolabe Immortal Sword in midair and clashed again. This king isn't dead yet. A demon shadow flapped its wings, creating a whirlpool of star waves. Green Feather King had returned. Senior, Su Fong's eyes were wet at this moment. Green Feather King's body was covered in bloody sword wounds. Although there were no fatal injuries, his demon chi was obviously weaker than before, and several of his wings were broken. He roared, "Don't worry and do your thing. Don't let everyone down. Everyone is caught in a whirlpool of life and death. Whether you can survive or not depends on whether you can take down the primordial god world." "Thank you, Senior. Just as you said, This king also needs to pass through the final stage. Although he has experienced the test of life and death in the Shinja Gate, fighting is what this king truly needs. Green Feather Monarch spat out immortal stones and used them on Heaven Monarch Soul Sword, maintaining the same speed as the Tao artifact Immortal Sword. He no longer diverted his attention and focused on stopping the nation artifact Astrolabe Immortal Sword from entering the primordial god world. Rumble. Taking the fire cloud steps, he stepped on an astonishing burning cloud of fire, shaking off all sorts of attacks. The spell Altar was right in front of them. It's finally here. With a wave of his hand, Su Fong unleashed the Starry Daylight Sword, condensing the Limitless Prime Clarity Sword formation from the Limitless Tao Art. A large expanse of sword light slashed towards the spell Altar. A World Palm imprint also surged from the spell Altar toward the sword formation. Supreme World Domain. Just as Su Fong was about to enter the altar, the familiar primordial god world's world Qi gushed out from behind, above, in front, and below. Moreover, it was an aura formed by chains and runes. He flashed again and was about to slash at the spell Altar when suddenly, the chains and runes in front of him became incomparably real, instantly condensing into a world barrier. That's right, it's a world barrier. Impossible. This is not the primordial god world. He turned around with a face full of shock. Behind him was also a world barrier that couldn't be seen with the naked eye. There were barriers under his feet and above his head. In a breath, Su Fong actually fell into a shackled space formed by the world barrier in this galaxy. Countless powerhouses also saw this scene. This was because a massive, golden world barrier had suddenly appeared around the primordial god world. It was like a golden sphere that floated in front of the primordial god world, almost fusing together with the world barrier. The Lord of Five Poisons, Li Ziqing, Su Jinhua, Li Haojie, and the other experts couldn't sense Su Fong's aura for a while and completely disappeared from the galaxy. They continued to fight with the immortals, still resolute. They believed that Su Fong wouldn't fall in the galaxy like this. This was not his end. I really didn't expect that there would be a realm lord in the mortal world who created such a shocking space floating in the galaxy. Inside the golden ball, looking at the solid world barrier, Su Fong only had 2 words written on his face: shock. The galaxy was a place where life couldn't survive. The same went for immortals. Immortals like Seven Stars and Holly couldn't use the strength that immortals should have in the galaxy. When they used it, it was shackled by the galaxy. It could be imagined that even immortals couldn't do it, so how powerful could a cultivator from a small world create in the galaxy? The shock in Su Fong's eyes came from the primordial god world, from Emperor Xinyuan, because Emperor Xinyuan had created a miracle that mortal cultivators couldn't do. How strong was Emperor Xinyuan? No. Under the great perfection perception, this world barrier didn't come from all of Emperor Xinyuan's power. It only had 1/10 of his aura, and most of it came from the primordial god world and the power of faith. Obviously, this world barrier came from both the Xinyuan Empire and the primordial god world. To be able to reach such a height, it completely proved that the primordial god world, under the fusion of generations of experts of the Jing family, surpassed the fusion of a small world by any realm lord. That was why it could reach such a level. Otherwise, when immortals came from the Zhuotian realm, Realm Lord Zhuotian could use such power. The best comparison was the Grand Immortal Realm Lord. If he had such ability, why would he submit to Su Fong so easily? This emperor has cultivated for tens of thousands of years, and I thought I wouldn't use such power. Even the emperors who inherited this emperor's power didn't use it. A buzzing sound came from above the barrier. It was Emperor Xinyuan. It wasn't his real body, but his will. He merged with the barrier around him and controlled this world. He said majestically, "When you push it to the limit, it means that your death is coming." This farce should also come to an end now. Emperor Xinyuan, Su Fong, was about to use a divine ability to attack the barrier. Who would have thought that a large number of chains would suddenly appear around him? He didn't react. The Xinyuan Emperor shouted, "This is my domain. If I want to suppress you, I only need a thought." Su Fong, You really are a terrifying genius. Unfortunately, you're just one person. You can't change anything. That's why you failed. Hua hua hua. He was surrounded by sealing chains. Su Fong hurriedly took the fire cloud steps, but who would have thought that at this moment, the power of the barrier shackles would cause the fire cloud steps to be unable to be used, and neither could the fire cloud wings. His movements were completely shackled. A large number of chains intertwined to form a large cauldron. Spirit Camel Immortal Cauldron. Su Fong couldn't be more familiar with it. He had already fallen into the immortal cauldron formed by the seal. However, it wasn't over yet. Below the seal, the real Spirit Camel Immortal Cauldron appeared. Emperor Xinyuan was even more proud. Haha, this emperor will suck you dry and finally seal your primordial spirit. I heard that it is a power that can completely change the fate of my Jing clan. Just wait to be shackled by the Spirit Camel Immortal Cauldron. This emperor wants to see it with his own eyes. 2-2. Suddenly, the Spirit Camel Immortal Cauldron that appeared below Su Fong was activated. Immortal light exploded. I will kill you. The immortal light from the small universe immortal pot also burst out from Su Fong's body. The effect was immediately formed. The small universe immortal pot sealed the cauldron around it, shaking it until it started to shake. Some seals began to peel off and break. It looked like it was about to struggle out. The real Spirit Camel Immortal Cauldron Dao artifact surged out. Qi flames instantly merged with the sealed cauldron, completely enveloping Su Fong, who was within the small universe immortal pot's divine power. This also meant that Su Fong had already been suppressed. It was just a matter of how long he could delay it. The small universe immortal pot's spirit appeared in Su Fong's divine aperture. Master, I can still hold on for a long time. You don't have to worry. I am originally a storage space, so I still have enough immortal qi. However, with the immortal cauldron shackles, Master can only think of a way to escape. I can only reach a stalemate with the immortal cauldron. If you want to leave here, the biggest problem is the world barrier. World barrier. His heart relaxed, but sharp swords still hung in the air. With the small universe immortal pot, he didn't have to worry about being suppressed. However, as it said, if he couldn't leave, he would definitely be suppressed for a long time. World barrier. Su Fong now relaxed himself. The divine power of the Dao artifact was protecting him. Even the Xinyuan Emperor couldn't hurt Su Fong at this moment. Because of the small universe immortal pot hanging above, he couldn't hurt Su Fong unless he had the power to break the Dao artifact. Overall, Su Fong had already fallen into the state of being shackled and suppressed. Since it's the world barrier, it shouldn't be a problem for me. I cultivated the Divine Emperor, Divine Origin Scripture, and obtained the power of the world. I just need to use my divine power and then find a way to control the world barrier. After sorting out his thoughts, Su Fong looked at the world barrier. The most important power was the world essence and the Emperor's Qi of the Divine Emperor, Divine Origin Scripture. In fact, he already had control of these two. What he needed to do now was to use his great divine power and control the world barrier. He could escape with his life or break the world barrier. He believed that even the Xinyuan Empire couldn't activate this kind of Star River Great Array multiple times. Ethereal True Solution. Power of the world. Pyryang power. He used the world barrier. With the primordial God world's power as the foundation, he released the Emperor's Qi of the Divine Emperor, Divine Origin Scripture, and then used the Ethereal True Solution. Just as he was about to break through the outer seal of the cauldron, his divine power was shackled by the Spirit Camel Immortal Cauldron. The Dao artifact blocked his power. Master, let me deal with the Dao artifact. The small universe immortal pot suddenly released an even more dazzling immortal light. In an instant, it vibrated like the Spirit Camel Immortal Cauldron. Su Fong's great divine power indeed came into contact with the seal of the cauldron. They had the same power. With the ethereal true solution, Su Fong began to smoothly fuse with the seal of the cauldron. However, an aura that couldn't be seen by the naked eye came from the seal of the cauldron. However, his primordial spirit could see it. It was the will of countless people. This is the will of the primordial god world. It is also the will of countless people in the Xinyuan Empire's royal family. When combined with faith, it can release an unparalleled suppressive power, forming a shackle, making my power unable to contend against the seal of the cauldron. Following that, his divine power began to shrink under the pressure of the faith. His powerful primordial spirit, which cultivated the demonic disintegration seal, was not worth mentioning compared to the faith of an ancient empire. The primordial god emperor coldly shouted, "Su Fong, this is the power of my empire. You can't fight against it. If an immortal is trapped here, he will probably be suppressed. Haha, this emperor won't play with you anymore. You can slowly wait for your death. This emperor will use the remaining power of the empire to control the empire artifact, Astrolabe Immortal Sword. First, I will kill that demon rock. Then those experts under you, the big goblin, and the others will all die. You can only watch as everything happens. In the end, you will slowly die alone. The other parties will turn into bubbles and disappeared. Heaven's secret life, shrinking technique. But Su Fong, who should have been in despair, was suddenly in high spirits. The heavens did not give up on him. So, he also had a peerless great divine power that could restrain fate and faith. It was also the most powerful power that the mysterious woman had passed on to him, besides the 9 suns, 9 transformations. It even made Su Fong feel that the heavens' secret life, shrinking technique, had surpassed the 9 suns, 9 transformations. Chapter 854. If I want to live, the heavens will not be able to take it away from me. The good fortune of fate is in control of the heavens. If I want something, the heavens cannot do without it. Fate is the creation of fortune, and I control the workings of heaven. If I am destroyed, everything will be destroyed. The good fortune of fate, controlling the mysteries of heaven. If I live forever, I will never die. If I want to live forever, the heavens and the earth will shake. If I want to live forever, the heavens will obey me. If I want to live forever, all the worlds will submit. If I want to live forever, the heavens will punish me. I will defy the heavens. If I want to live forever, the earth will bury me. I will break the earth. If I want to live forever, the earth will return to the earth. If I don't exist, there will be nothing. Heaven's secret life, shrinking technique. A large amount of the will of the royal family that came from the barrier of the world for countless years turned into faith and suppressed Su Fong's divine power. He, who cultivated the heavenly devil disintegration seal, couldn't resist the attack of so many faith wills. How could he deal with the large amount of faith wills condensed by countless experts of the royal family alone? Under the constant pressure, Su Fong started to use the heaven's secret life, shrinking technique at this critical moment. He used the essence of the great Tao and chanted it with his essence spirit. The surging Tao runes first formed a defense in his divine aperture. Then, a large amount of Tao runes gushed out of his mind and turned into an aura of Tao runes that surged towards the large amount of faith wills. Chi, just as the faith wills from the royal family touched the Tao runes, they were like moths to a flame. They were instantly burned and turned into ashes. As expected, the heaven's secret life shrinking technique is above all living beings. It can deceive fate. The more faith wills are crushed. Now, let's see how I can surpass the power of faith left by countless experts in the Xinyuan Empire. Even more Tao runes gushed out. The barrier of the world was like a pack of wolves and tigers. It continued to attack. The wills of faith wills were human figures. They were all experts of the royal family who cultivated the divine emperor, divine origin scripture. Su Fong sensed that the wills of faith wills were all around him. Sizzle. The Tao runes turned into surging power that directly attacked the wills of faith wills. Countless wills were burned and shattered. Rise. All of a sudden, the divine might that came from the formation was greatly reduced. He shouted. As the mini-universe immortal pot fought against the spiritual camel immortal cauldron, he gradually floated up from the shackles of the spiritual camel immortal cauldron. Even if he was not threatened by the spiritual camel immortal cauldron, he still had the small heaven and earth immortal pot to deal with this Tao treasure. However, when he arrived above the sealed cauldron, the shackles from the world barrier were still suppressing him. The world barrier had two main restraining powers. First, it was power. The power came from the primordial god world, as well as from the Xinyuan Empire's countless years of national strength. In addition, the Sage Emperor's primordial god scripture was the foundation of the world barrier. Secondly, there were the countless wills of faith. Will and power fused together to form the powerful world barrier. Su Fang had already used the heavenly secret life shrinking technique to shake away a large amount of the will of faith. However, the world barrier's power was still squeezing this space. He still had to think of a way to deal with it. The world barrier is formed by the primordial god world, the Xinyuan Empire, and the Sacred Emperor's primordial god scripture. I also have the same power in my body. Why do I have to resist it and not absorb it? This is the same as having my marrow cleansed, and as long as I can absorb it, I will have unimaginable power. Suppressed. After pondering for a long time, many of his hair had already turned white. When he waved them, they looked like white threads. Suddenly, his eyes became incomparably hale and hearty. I will use the 9 suns, 9 transformations, and to try to break the spatial seal and absorb it. A bold idea appeared. He actually wanted to absorb the world barrier's power. Herculean divine palm, a supreme aura of a small world, or even a great world, exploded from Su Fang's arms. At the same time, it exploded into the void. With 2 rumbling sounds, 2 holes with a diameter of 3 meters appeared in the space of the array formation that was filled with pressure. After a while, the 2 holes merged into a 3-meter hole without any pressure. 9 suns, 9 transformations. First transformation. When Su Fang arrived in the hole, it was as if he was in nature. After forming the hand seals, the true origin of the 9 yang meridians in his body began to activate. 9 pure yang energies began to circulate in the shape of a whirlpool. The other 4 yang meridians also began to cooperate. All the true qi in his meridians, muscles, bones, and black lotus blood threads were absorbed into the center of the 9 yang meridians. Then, all the true qi was absorbed into the 9 yang meridians, forming a shocking whirlpool. It spiraled out from the depths of Su Fang's body, forming a pure yang energy field. After this energy field appeared, it spewed out divine power. Su Fang also released his godly image. He began to use his pure yang energy to combine the power of the Sacred Emperor divine origin scripture, the primordial god world, and the Xinyuan Empire in his body. They exploded together and began to absorb the power of the array formation outside the energy field. Whoosh! Whoosh! The effect was immediately formed. The divine power that burst out from the fusion of the 3 powers really did absorb the power of the array formation around him bit by bit. The speed also increased. With the naked eye, one could clearly see that Su Fang was gradually becoming like a human-shaped sponge as he began to absorb the brilliance of the array formation around him. In the end, when Su Fang pushed it to the extreme, the power of the array formation flowed into Su Fang's body like a stream, making Su Fang's power surge. However, the world barrier was so vast. How long would it take to absorb the power at the speed of stream? 100 years? 1,000 years? No, not to mention 100 years. He couldn't even wait 10 years. He couldn't even wait a year. If he waited a moment longer, how many cultivators who were fighting against the Xinyuan Empire in the galaxy outside would die? Even the Green Feather Emperor's life would be in danger. Especially when the Divine Origin Emperor personally went out to use the national treasure, the Astrolabe Immortal Sword. I have to seize every moment. Su Fang gritted his teeth and clawed his palm with his fingertips, making himself feel pain. Then, he began to fiercely absorb the 9 yin qi from the primordial chaos sacred realm. When the 9 yin qi gushed out of the ancient mirror and into the 9 yang meridians, there was a vibration, and the speed of the whirlpool in the spline increased by 100 times. Moreover, This terrifying yin-yang whirlpool also took the initiative to absorb the golden lotus stone flower that was surrounded by 5 layers of starlight in the center of the yang meridians. At this moment, he was in an illusion. He actually had a connection with the golden lotus stone flower. He felt that the golden lotus stone flower was extremely deep, and there was an infinitely huge world inside it. It seemed to be beckoning him, releasing an astonishing power that was absorbing the yin-yang qi. Not only the golden lotus stone flower, but the 5 layers of starlight around it also felt like there were 5 layers of space, and each layer was fused together, forming a state of qi circulation. It can't be an illusion. He suddenly came back to his senses and shivered. It seemed that he had experienced a wandering soul. He hurriedly looked at the golden lotus stone flower, and the result was like what he saw in his illusion. The yin-yang qi formed by the 9 yang meridians was actually being absorbed by the golden lotus stone flower. Although the speed wasn't too shocking, it was much faster than a stream. Then, a chain of changes was formed. The golden lotus stone flower was absorbing the power of the yin-yang whirlpool formed by the 9 yang meridians and the 4 yang meridians next to it, and this yin-yang qi flowed out of his body, causing the pure yang aura around Su Fong to suddenly form a starlight whirlpool. Yes, it was a starlight whirlpool. At first glance, one would think that it was a terrifying interstellar storm born in the galaxy, or a starlight whirlpool. But in reality, this wasn't a storm or a whirlpool that could only be seen in the galaxy. It was an aura formed by the yin-yang qi that even Su Fong couldn't explain. The aura was like the world of stars in the depths of the yang meridians, emitting starlight and surrounding him. It was as though Su Fong wasn't in the world barrier, but in the stars. The aura turned into a starlight state, becoming a ball of starlight. This wasn't the end. Suddenly, the starlight started to crazily form a whirlpool, and the surging power from the world barrier was like a surging river, being absorbed by the starlight whirlpool and finally entering Su Fong's body. Unbelievable. I actually have a chill that is afraid that this surge of power will tear my body apart. Even Su Fong didn't expect that there would be such an absorption rate. The world barrier array's power entered his body through his meridians, black lotus blood vessels, and finally into the 13 yang meridians. However, the yang meridians weren't the end. The end was the golden lotus stone flower. It didn't seem like Su Fong was absorbing the world barrier, but the world fragment was absorbing this power. Time continued to pass, and Su Fong, who was in a state of infinite anticipation, was waiting for the world barrier to weaken and then be destroyed in one fell swoop. He didn't know how much energy it had absorbed, but suddenly, in the middle of the 13 yang meridians, the golden lotus stone flower that was still and absorbing energy suddenly extended some mysterious lightning from the 5 layers of the world stars, forming a sizzling sound, and then surging into the golden lotus stone flower. The golden lotus stone flower actually started to move clockwise from its static state. Then, it started to rotate faster, but the speed wasn't too shocking. It was like a wind chime that was slightly raised by a mighty wind, and the wind chime was slightly swaying. Moreover, there was a flash of lightning between the golden lotus stone flower, but it disappeared in the end, and the starlight of the 5 layers of the world also returned to silence. However, the golden lotus stone flower continued to rotate on its own. Then, this insignificant power seemed to drive all the power, causing the starlight whirlpool outside his body to absorb the world barrier at a speed that was several times faster. The world barrier's power was like a magnificent army, and it started to rush into Su Fong's body. At this moment, it didn't seem like Su Fong was absorbing it, but the world barrier's power was actively rushing into Su Fong's body. 2. The surroundings started to crumble. So, because Su Fong was absorbing the power too quickly, the surrounding array started to collapse at a speed that was 1 zhang. 1 zhang equals 3m. A huge collapsing hole without any energy gradually appeared inside the world barrier. In the center of the hole, Su Fong was absorbing the surrounding power, and the collapsing speed was becoming more and more shocking. As for Su Fong, He was shocked, and then he started to laugh. He didn't expect the world fragment to absorb the power of the world barrier at such a terrifying speed when it started to rotate on its own. This is too miraculous. My strength and injuries have completely recovered, and I still have to seal this power into runes and give them to the big shots to fuse with so that they can recover to their powerful state. The world barrier was collapsing, and soon it would completely disappear. No, it wouldn't disappear, but it would be absorbed into Su Fang's body and into the golden lotus stone flower. He wantonly formed seals, and the power that was rushing in was injected into the runes. However, he didn't notice that 1/5 of his head was pale white. The Tianji life shrinking technique was consuming his life force. However, he didn't cherish it at all. His life was so long, and it was used today, as long as he could cross this peak. So what if he lost more than half of his life force? The world barrier was already close to 1/3, forming a large collapsing hole. He estimated that soon, the entire world barrier would become Su Fang's meal. Outside the world barrier, the primordial god world, in a higher galaxy. Chi, a bloody mist accompanied the explosion of sword chi. Chapter 855. Rock Demon, you're very strong and fast, but don't forget that this is the primordial god world. I have the power of a world and a nation. Look, please move. One world, one life. All the power will explode from my hands. The Astrolabe Immortal Sword can be used to 80% of its power. It's already a miracle that you can use up to 50% of your Tao artifact. Accept your fate. You're no match for a nation artifact. Green Feather Monarch came out of the blood mist. The nation artifact, the Astrolabe Immortal Sword, suddenly attacked again. Fortunately, Heaven Lord Soul Sword stopped it halfway. The Primordial God Emperor was a mile away, which was the galaxy above the Primordial God world. He was sitting on a throne with thousands of experts injecting their magic power into it. He used the power of a nation and the essence of a world to attack Green Feather Monarch. I'll kill you first, then the other cultivators. Humph, you deserve to die. Without you blocking the nation artifact, the war would have ended long ago. Killing you 1,000 times won't be enough to vent my anger. Another large amount of world power and Emperor Qi exploded around the Xunyuan Empire. The Astrolabe Immortal Sword attacked Green Feather Monarch. If Green Feather Monarch was hit by any sword, he would definitely die under this horrifying Tao artifact. Fortunately, Heaven Lord Soul Sword was here. The greatest ability of this Tao artifact was that it didn't need much magic power from a user. Instead, it only needed immortal stones to attack. However, the Astrolabe Immortal Sword clashed with Heaven Lord Soul Sword again and again, forming a terrifying sword chi that left wounds on Green Feather Monarch's body. Green Feather Monarch attacked with his 2 wings and was always able to control Heaven Lord Soul Sword in time to block the oncoming Astrolabe Immortal Sword. From time to time, he would look at the battlefield behind him. Tao artifacts and immortal lights were clashing in the center. A large number of black holes and cracks formed. In addition, arrows and mighty primordial god cannons were constantly shooting from outside the encirclement. The entire central battlefield was covered in destruction. It was impossible to predict how many losses both sides had suffered. The Xunyuan Empire had the advantage in numbers. It was one thing to have a large number of people, but the Renhuang realm only had a few 100,000 people. Fighting to the death like this was not enough. If this continued, hundreds of thousands of experts would die. Even the dozen or so experts who were fighting with the Immortals were probably not having a good time either, even though they were facing 2 powerful Immortals with astonishing means. Su Fang, Green Feather King, looked at the world barrier and urgently called out, "You can't fall like this. Everyone is waiting for you." Emperor Xunyuan once again released an astonishing chi flame. Demon Rock, you don't even care about yourself, yet you still worry about that kid Su Fang. He's going to die today anyway. It's just that he'll die later than you. Don't expect him to come and save you. Of course, you can't possibly be an Immortal's opponent. Sooner or later, you'll all be annihilated. Boom. Who knew? Just as Blue Feather Monarch was in the most dangerous situation, The space in front of the primordial god world array, altar, and the world barrier trembled. Oh, even the spell altars at the side were shaken by the force of the tremors and lost much of their luster. The origin god emperor was startled, but his worried expression soon vanished. With his strength and methods, he didn't need to worry about any problems occurring with the world barrier. Crack, crack, all of a sudden, in less than a breath, the world barrier shook violently, and a series of array cracks appeared. As soon as this scene appeared, Green Feather Monarch roared in the sky, full of energy. "Huh, great kid, you didn't let us down." "Impossible." Emperor Xinyuan was stunned. "This is the most powerful array space created by the power of my empire and the power of the world. Coupled with a doctrine artifact, even immortals can't kill their way out. He's just a mortal cultivator, an ant that hasn't even reached the flying immortal realm. How could it be?" Huff, huff. Immediately afterward, hundreds of thousands of imperial troops and powerful warriors protecting the primordial god world surrounded the cracked world barrier in a phalanx formation. In a short time, they had formed 3 layers of encirclement. They were waiting for the world barrier to change, and then hundreds of thousands of people would immediately attack Su Fong. No matter how powerful Su Fong was, he couldn't resist the attacks of hundreds of thousands of powerful warriors in a short time. Crack, in the sky, Emperor Xinyuan was still controlling the astrolabe immortal sword with the main purpose of killing Green Feather Monarch. Even if Su Fong came out alive, he could use this doctrine artifact to kill him. What was there to fear? The astrolabe immortal sword was obviously the most powerful weapon of the Xinyuan Empire. Suddenly, the world barrier cracked again, and it was full of cracks. Whoosh, whoosh. Streaks of starlight shone through the cracks of the barrier. The hundreds of thousands of powerful warriors were about to attack with their magic treasures. Clang, inside the barrier, there was a fierce sound of metal colliding. This sound wave, combined with the mysterious starlight, actually cracked the barrier again. Boom! In an instant, the world barrier that sealed Su Fong exploded in the air from the force of the doctrine artifact and the starlight. The power of this explosion was too fierce. Before the hundreds of thousands of people around could react, the explosion had already engulfed them, and the primordial god world was almost shaking slightly. Whoosh! A figure jumped out from the destructive explosion, releasing starlight, and flew toward Emperor Xinyuan and Green Feather Monarch at an astonishing speed. "Kid!" Green Feather Monarch was overjoyed. Emperor Xinyuan's face was ashen. "My most powerful array can't even shackle a feather transformation realm cultivator." In the starlight, it was Su Fong in a white robe, full of the aura of the galaxy. He shouted excitedly in the sky, "Senior Peng Monarch, thank you for your hard work." "Humph, so what if you come out alive?" Emperor Xinyuan was furious. He looked at the explosion and saw the spiritual camel immortal cauldron and the small universe immortal pot colliding with each other. Su Fong came behind Emperor Xinyuan. "Senior, this is the power of the immortals and the Xinyuan Empire. Take it first, and after you recover, don't worry about the 2 immortals. Use the Lord of Heaven's Soul sword to kill the 3 immortals and the 4 puppets." Whoosh! Green Feather Monarch turned into a human form, stepping on the Lord of Heaven's Soul sword, and his body was full of shocking sword wounds. Grabbing a Xian Guang, Green Feather Monarch turned around and flew away on his sword. Su Fong took out the Starry Daylight sword. "Emperor Xinyuan, I said you, and I still have a fight. Today, we will decide the winner. I don't care if you're an emperor or a sector lord. You're just a powerful enemy that I, Su Fong, must defeat." Emperor Xinyuan shook his wrist, and the nation weapon, the astrolabe immortal sword, appeared in front of him. Without a Tao artifact, you can only rely on your natal magic treasure and the demonic power of the nightmare blood transformation. Haha, now that I have regained control of the nation weapon, you are no match for me. I don't need a Tao artifact to kill you. Also, to become the strongest in a small world, you don't have to rely on a Tao artifact. In a small world, royal Grey Dharma artifacts are the most powerful. Emperor Xinyuan, if I don't step on your corpse, then you will step on mine and laugh to the end. Ha! You're courting death. Emperor Xinyuan suddenly sat on his throne, leaving thousands of people to maintain the seals. His speed was about the same as the Wondrous Gate. This was the primordial god world Starfield, so it was normal for the Xinyuan Empire to have such speed. The astrolabe immortal sword directly shot out. Just its sword energy alone had reached the level of being able to kill any mortal realm expert. I am the ruler of this world. Su Fong used the flame cloud steps. When the astrolabe immortal sword attacked, the starry sky was pierced by the sword chi. However, Su Fong was one step faster. He used the Wondrous Gate's speed to disappear. How can his speed reach such a high level? Damn, this person's control over the starry sky has changed so much. Behind him, the Emperor Xinyuan suddenly felt his hair stand on end. Seeing Su Fong suddenly disappear, with his control over the starry sky, he felt as if Su Fong had become a completely different person. It wasn't that he was strong, but that he felt that his control over the world energy had caused him to undergo a huge transformation in the starry sky. Heavenly Sage Tyrant Body. In his panic, the Emperor Xinyuan could no longer sense Su Fong's existence. He could only use his defenses. A burning monarch chi appeared around him, forming an absolutely domineering domain that was 300 meters wide. The domain exploded, but there was no one inside. It was all boiling and oppressive monarch chi, as well as world energy. There was no one inside. The Emperor Xinyuan was startled, but his back was still cold. He looked outside the domain, searching for Su Fong's whereabouts. This person was actually able to escape from the strongest barrier in the history of my empire. Could it be that he has some peerless treasure? If I had known, I would have been more cautious. I would have completely suppressed him in this space before coming out to end this battle. He continued to use his World Lord's sensing ability, searching for Su Fong in the calm and empty void. Where was he? He had disappeared. There was no one inside the domain, and outside the domain was the starry sky. Protect the Emperor. The stalemate lasted for 2 hours. The Emperor Xinyuan was still uneasy. He was still unable to find Su Fong. As for the thousands of experts, they flew over from the starry sky. The final victor is me, in front of the Emperor Xinyuan, not behind him. There was no substance, only a shocking boiling monarch chi, as well as world energy. Unexpectedly, there were 2 rings of flames the size of a longan. From the outside, it looked like a flame formed from burning energy. But from the inside of the flame, there was a pair of eyes. The 2 eyes were burning with flames. They came from the primordial god world, the Xinyuan Empire's power. And upon closer inspection, the 2 eyes were being controlled by a flame person. They were only 10 steps away from the Xinyuan Empire. 10 steps. Suddenly, the energy flame burned even more fiercely. Along with the surging energy flame, it approached the Emperor Xinyuan step by step. At this time, the Emperor Xinyuan did not notice anything strange. All the energy around him was released by him. There was no problem. Protect the Emperor. Thousands of people were about to enter the domain. Emperor Xinyuan slowly waved his hand and then shouted, "Activate the barrier and search for Su Fong in the surroundings." Pucci, just as he said the 2 words Su Fong, a flame swept over. The Emperor Xinyuan was wearing a Dao artifact armor. Nearby, the astrolabe immortal sword was entrenched. Suddenly, a flame swept over from in front of him. Suddenly, a starlight sword appeared and pierced through the Emperor Xinyuan's throat. The Emperor Xinyuan subconsciously grabbed his neck with both hands. Then, he opened his mouth and spat out blood. His hands grabbed a starlight sword that gradually appeared. Starlight sword. Emperor, Emperor! Thousands of experts shouted in despair. It's you! The Emperor Xinyuan saw the starlight sword and knew who suddenly attacked him. His eyes trembled. The nation artifact astrolabe, immortal sword behind him, suddenly stabbed towards the flame. Hua! The starlight sword suddenly spun. At the same time, the flame behind him suddenly turned into a human and flashed behind the Emperor Xinyuan. The Emperor Xinyuan's head fell. The astrolabe immortal sword also stabbed into the flame.